Whatever it gives to security is what it gives back to you. Every day is for the thief, or one day is for the owner. That talks about that the thief is 99 times smarter than the owner. That's what it means. One must need to think like one.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Samuel. Good morning, everyone. Can you please confirm that you can hear me? Uh, Good morning, everyone. Can you please confirm that you can hear me, please?
Please show reactions. Everybody show reactions. Thank you.
Actually, I forgot to ask for my love emoji before I left. So you guys.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can hear you
Okay.
clearly too.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So I'll just go ahead and then share my screen. Uh, okay. So can you please confirm that you can see my screen? You can just drop a reaction to confirm that you can see my screen. Mm. Can you see my screen? Oh, all right. Thank you so much. All right. So today we'll be starting our class on web server hacking and then counter measures. So I'll be continuing the class from where this lesson stopped. So all right. So we'll be starting with web application attacks and then counter measures. But then before we move into talking about web application attacks, we need to first talk about web server. And then we need to talk about the concepts behind web servers. And then we also need to talk about some vulnerabilities affecting web servers and the likes. All right, so okay, so I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can see it very well. All right, so whenever we are talking about web server, we are basically talking about a computer system that can store, it can process, and then it can also deliver web pages via something that we refer to as the HTTP. So this HTTP that we are talking about is referred to as the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So a web server is basically a hardware or software that can basically store, process, and then deliver web pages to users via the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. All right, so a web server operates based on an architecture that we refer to as a client-server architecture. So for this client-server architecture, what you need to know here is that there has to be an existence of a web client, and there has to be an existence of a server. So I hope that I'm clear. I hope that you can still hear me. Okay. So now this web client refers to a device, you can just pick up your phone or maybe your laptop and then you open a web browser and then you try to like access a web page or you try to access a website. In reality, what is happening is that this web page that you're trying to access or this website that you're trying to access, they are being hosted on a web server. So the client server architecture comes into play whenever you pick up your device and then you open your browser and then you try to enter the URL that is the URL or the address of that particular website. And then you type that in your browser and then you click on enter or you click on search or whatever it is. So the moment you do that, what happens in reality is that an HTTP request is being sent for that particular device via the web browser. Then it is being sent to the web server. So an HTTP request, a hypertext transfer protocol request, is being sent from that web client to the web server. Now, the web server picks that request, it processes the request, and then sends a response to you, which is known as the HTTP response. So that process or that particular architecture basically talks about your client server architecture. So within your client server architecture, there exists something that we call a request response cycle. So now the request response cycle is also similar to what I've explained before. You are sending a request and then you receive a response. You pick a device, you send a request. The device sends the request, right? The server receives the request, processes the request, and sends the response. So you have a client server architecture, and then you also have the request response cycle. Okay. So now in the context of the diagram that you can see here, you have a web client that sends an HTTP request to the web server. The web server picks the request, processes it, and then check, depending on whatever it is that the web client is requesting for. It is, if the web client is requesting for, let's say, a static page, then the web server can just go to the static data store and then fetch the content of that particular page from that static data store and then return that to the client via the HTTP response, which is your hypertext transfer protocol response. Then you also have a situation whereby the web client sends an HTTP request to the web server, right? And then based on the fact that the resource that the web client is requesting for is not something that you can easily get from the static data store, i.e., there has to be some computation that will be done by the application server and maybe the backend and all of that. So in that kind of situation, in that kind of scenario, so what happened is that the web server sends something known as a servlet request to the application server itself, where you have all the other services, the logic and all of that. So like process and then return that particular response that the client is requesting for. But then that particular situation only occurs whenever the request or the resource that the web client is requesting for is not static, i.e., it is something that has to be computed and then returned to the web client. All right. Okay. So you have something, you also have, different components of the web server. So you have the document root, you have the server root, you have the virtual document tree, you have the web proxy, and then you have the virtual hosting. So each of these components has like specific functionality that they do. So like they basically like perform one or two functionality. They have like some specific things that they do. So for your document root, basically we are just looking at that part or that particular folder that stores all the critical HTML files, CSS files, JavaScript files, all those files that are being requested by the particular client. So your document root, the critical HTML files that are being related to the web pages for a particular site that you're trying to visit. That is where they are being stored. They are being stored in the document root. Then you also have something we call the server root. And for the server root, basically it's like a folder or a part that basically stores information regarding configuration files, log files, executables, and all of that. So for example, now, if you have a web server and then maybe the web server is running like an Apache, like the Apache web server, right? That particular setup, it will be configured to like serve, let's say maybe a web page or a website, right? Or a web application or whatever it is. That setup is going to have its own document root, i.e., a part where all the files are being stored or where all the HTML files are being stored, a part where the HTML files will be stored, a part where the JavaScript files will be stored, a part where the CSS files will be stored, and then all of that will be stored. All of that will be the document root. Then, in relationship with the Apache server itself, the Apache server is going to have its own configuration files, right? It will have its own its own folder where the logs will be stored and all of that. So all those particular parts will be referred and then they will be regarded as the server root, right? Okay. Then you also have the virtual document tree, which basically is like a storage, right? And then it provides a kind of functionality for you to be able to like access a site from, or should I say a resource from a different disk itself. You just have to like configure a mapping such that by the time a user or a client tries to like access that particular resource, then this server itself knows that, oh, I need to like go to this particular disk and then return or retrieve the content of this particular site that the user is trying to access. Then you have something that we also call the virtual hosting. Well, for virtual hosting, this kind of allows you to host multiple sites or multiple domain on the same server. So now, depending on your configuration, you might be able to host multiple domains, multiple websites on the same server, and they will be having the same IP address. You might also be able to like configure it in such a way that you can host multiple websites or multiple domains on the same server, and then you configure it in such a way that you'll be using a different IP address. That's also possible. And then the last thing that you have here is what we call a web proxy. And when we talk about web proxy server, basically what they do is they kind of act as an intermediary, as a middleman between the client or the user that is making a request and the web server. So now for a web proxy, the way it works is that when the user or a client picks up his or her device, like maybe a mobile phone or a computer system, and then he or she tries to enter, let's say, the URL of the site, right? And then so you open your web browser and then you type in the URL of the site that you want to access, and then you click on enter. What happens is that the request, instead of it being sent directly to the server, it will be sent directly to the web proxy. So web proxy, in reality, it can allow the web server or the server itself to basically mask its own IP address. So the user or the normal client is not even aware of the IP address of the server, the main server itself. And every request that is being made by the user will be sent via the web proxy. Then the web proxy sees the request. The web proxy can decide to add one or two to the request and then forward that request to the server itself, that is the major server itself. So now when the major server receives that request, then major server can process it, and maybe it is like a request to like fetch maybe a particular resource, maybe a particular page. The web server, the main server, it receives it from the web proxy, it processes it, right? And then by the time it is done processing it, it returns the response directly to the web proxy. And then as usual, the web proxy receives that particular response, then it can decide to also maybe add one or two to the headers, maybe edit one or two, maybe do one or two things with it, rather, and then forward that particular response to the client. So instead of the client interacting directly with the server, the client interacts directly with the web proxy. So does that make sense? Let me be sure that I have people that are following me here. You can just drop a reaction, so I'll be sure that you're following me. Can drop a reaction to show that you're following me. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Nat Itauma. Okay. I'm guessing that you have a question, right? So I don't know. Can Ms. Blue help us unmute him? I'm guessing he has a question.
Nat, you can speak now.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Oluwatobi.
Yeah, good morning, Nat.
So from your, I just want to ask a question just based on properties I just mentioned now.
Oh,
I don't want to
okay.
go too forward, but
Okay.
what's really the difference? Because from what you've mentioned right now, where a client talks to a proxy, sorry, browsing through a proxy, don't get to the server directly, it has to go through the proxy and things like that. That's
Yes.
similarly what a VPN does as well. So can you probably maybe shed more light on what's the difference between using a proxy and using a VPN?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So when you talk about the VPN is basically what you refer to as a virtual private network, right? And a VPN, basically, what it does is that it kind of creates like an encrypted channel for you to like try to like communicate with a particular resource, right? So it's kind of like create a channel for you to like communicate with a particular server, like an encrypted channel. But then when you talk about the proxy, it's like you having something in between that you use to like mask the IP of your own server. So now what the client gets to see is going to be the IP address of the proxy server and not the IP address of your own server. Does that make sense? So now the idea behind this is that, well, obviously it is for security, like security reasons, security purposes, and all of those good stuff, right? So now the idea behind this is that if let's say the bad guy, so a bad guy like maybe an attacker comes in and then tries attacking you, the IP address that the attacker will see, it will not be the IP address of your own server. It will be the IP address of the what? Of the proxy server. So indirectly, the attacker will be attacking the proxy server and not your own server. So there are two different things. So we are talking about a VPN, like I said, a virtual private network allows you to like create like an encrypted channel to like, you know, access a resource or communicate with a server and all of that. But a web proxy acts as an intermediary to basically max your own IP address, max your own resource and all of that. And then based on how they are being set up, when it receives a request, it knows that, oh, okay, this request is meant for this particular server. So it's just forward that particular request to the intended server itself. So does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. So I guess everyone can hear me. So I'll just move on to the next thing that I have to say. Yeah, all right. So now with web servers, like you said, just like with every other thing that you know, web servers, they have their own security issues, right? So, and then just like I've said before, web server, they are basically like an hardware software or application that can basically host websites, and then they can make them available via the internet. Okay. So now web server security issue, well, attackers, they try to, you know, they can try to like look for ways to like, you know, attack web server by maybe trying to exploit this configuration related issue, or even operating system related issue, or maybe issues within the version of the software or whatever it is that you're using, and then all of those good stuff. So basically, this is what you have here, right? The diagram that you have here just basically shows a simple conceptual diagram of a web server, right? Whereby you have a user using a browser on his or her computer, then trying to like access a particular site. It could be website 1, it could be website 2. But what you need to know here is that each of those sites, they are being hosted on the web server. And then based on the fact that they are being hosted on web server, and then they are being connected to the internet, then the implication of that is you as a user, you can basically just pick up your device, like your phone or your laptop, and then you try to access that website over the internet, right? So that is possible because the sites are being hosted on the web server and then they are being exposed to the internet. Okay, now different servers like tend to have different forms of vulnerabilities. So for example, now whenever you're testing, let's assume that you're carrying out the maybe an ethical hacking engagement, and then you're trying to like test maybe at you know, you're authorized, you have been granted the authorization, and then you're trying to like test a site. So most likely the web server might be in scope, most likely to be in scope. Okay, yeah. So you might want to like test the web server, and then so some of the things you might be looking out for, or some of the things you might be watching out for is, oh, what type of server is this particular domain using? Oh, maybe it is using Apache web server. Oh, can I get it? Then the next question you'll be asking yourself is going to be that, oh, can I get the version of this Apache web server? Oh, then it is using this particular version. And then from there, you can then start mapping out a way to basically ethically hack that particular web server. So now web servers, you know, they have different forms of vulnerabilities, ranging down from directory transversal and the likes. So when I get there, I'll talk more about that. Okay, so now what are the common goals behind web server hacking? So, you know, attackers, as usual, like you have some attackers that might basically hack maybe for fun. Some of them might try to hack maybe for recognition or whatever it is that they are trying to achieve. But then some of the common goals of web server attack include: one, an attacker can choose to hack because the attacker is trying to steal credit card related details or any other forms of sensitive details via using phishing technique. So when you say phishing, it could be that maybe the attacker will decide to, oh, okay, I want to add this particular server, right? So maybe the server has like some site hosted on it. So maybe one of the sites happens to be a site, maybe an e-commerce website, right? And then maybe on the e-commerce website, based on the logic or the flow of the application, at some point in time, they're like sites that request maybe credit card related information. So that might be the reason why the attacker might then choose that, oh, let me try to like see if I can hack this particular web server. Why? Because I know that the moment I'm able to like hack that server and then gain a shell access to the server, then most likely I'll be able to access the database. And then the moment I can access the database, I might be able to see the credit card related information in plain text. And a whole lot of those that they might, they can also like choose to like, uh, hack web server. And then some of it involves sometimes they might be trying to see that, oh, is there any way in which I can get an access to the backend code? So when it comes to the backend code, then you know that they're not like codes that you see, right? Because the one you see, like most times when you go to a website and then you are viewing the page source of that website, most of what you see, they're like the fronted code. But now, oh, maybe the attacker is like, oh, is there any way in which I might be able to like find out the logic of this particular application? Can I see the code? How do I do all of that? Then, an option that the attacker, an option that the attacker might choose to explore is to, try to hack the web server. Why? Because he or she is trying to see if there is any way that he or she can obtain the code, the source code of that particular application. And some other reasons, other reasons like compromising the database, which is similar to some of the things I've said before. And then sometimes they might actually choose to hack the web server because they want to use that web server as a botnet into conducting something that we refer to as a denial of service attack or a distributed denial of service attack. And this is easy, right? Not like it is easy. What I'm trying to say, like what I'm trying to say here is that, the attacker could choose to, let me see if I can have this web server, and then find a way of controlling that web server into becoming a botnet. Then I can then use that web server into conducting a denial of service attack. So when we say botnet, what we are referring to is that, we call them zombies, like bots, zombies. So the first thing is what you have to compromise them. And then after compromising them, the next thing is what you must be able to like command them, i.e., control them. You compromise them and then you control them. So after compromising them, when it comes to the aspect or the stage whereby you start controlling them, then they obviously become like bots because they start answering to the attacker, right? Then the attacker can then choose to like use that web server into conducting a denial of service attack. Now, some other attacks can be performed for personal reasons rather than financial gain. For example, now, pure curiosity. So some of them I choose to, try to hack a web server because they're being curious. So I see if truly the web server can be hacked. So another thing is maybe they can just like choose to like hack the web server because they just see it to be like a challenge. So then being able to like hack that web server means that they have been able to like complete that particular challenge. And then some other reasons like to like damage the target organization reputation. All right. So what are some of the dangerous security flaws that can affect web server security? One of them is failing to update the web server with the latest patches. So most times, whenever, not every time do, but then most times, whenever you see like a software releasing an update, then maybe we should say most times or sometimes, then the update could be released as a result of the presence of a security issue with the existing ones. So there is a security issue with the existing ones. So what they do is what? They will patch that. Then after patching it, then they will release an update for people to do what? To basically download or update. So then the moment you patch your system or the moment you click on update or the moment you click on maybe update automatically or maybe check for updates and then you click on update, it implies that the latest patch that they've released has then been applied to that particular thing that you are using. Remember, the web server could be what? It could be an hardware, and then it could also be a what? Software. Okay. So what are also some other dangerous security flaws that can affect web server security? Another one is using the same system administrator credentials everywhere. For example, now within your organization, it is known that every single, every single admin related, maybe panel or pages or account, they have the same username, and then the same password. That kind of situation now, there will be an issue somewhere, because the moment that type of organization gets hacked, and then someone, maybe just like an attacker or just someone, is able to like get the username and then the password. The implication of that is that the attacker can basically access every other platform or panel or account that belongs to the admin. Why? Because the admin chose to use the same credential across all the accounts. And then another security flaw that could affect web server security is allowing unrestricted internal and outbound traffic. And the last one is what? Running unhardened applications and servers. I.e., instead of you, ensuring that maybe across your network you have proper segmentations in place, you have a proper access control in place. That is, you have a policy in place, or you have like a structure in place such that maybe some particular software are only running on a less privileged account, right? So your normal web server is running as maybe www-data, and then you have like segmentation in place. The implication of that is that even if you get hacked, right, then the hacker or the attacker will only have a shell as www-data. He or she still has to look for ways to become the root user or the admin user of that particular server. So we just want to ensure that you're adding it, i.e., you use strong password, proper segmentation, proper access control, implemented, and then all of that. Instead of you, just running things with a high privilege account, you ensure that you run some, all of those, maybe your softwares, your servers, and all of that. You run them with just the assets that they need to, like, perform their normal activity. So just go there and then start running your servers as root. Okay. So moving on. So what are the impact of web server attack? So the moment the web server gets compromised, a lot of things can happen, and some of them is what is what we have here. One of it is what we refer to as compromise of user accounts, because the moment they're able to like compromise the web server, and then they're able to like locate maybe maybe the environment variable, or they're able to like locate maybe one or two log files, or they're able to like locate one or two configuration files. Then the implication of that is what? They start seeing valid user accounts, they start seeing valid user usernames, they start seeing valid user passwords, in which they can actually use again to launch other forms of attack against you. Another thing is, whenever web server attack should occur, it could lead to what we call a website defacement. So when we say website defacement, we mean you changing the content that is being shown on the web page. So the attacker, based on the fact that he or she is being able to like gain an access to the web server itself, then the attacker can choose to delete your landing page and replace it with whatever it is that he sees fit. Why? Because he or she has been able to gain an access into your web server. Does that make sense? Okay. So let me be sure that you're following me and not just that, I'm just speaking. So I'd like to see your reaction to show they are following me, and then you understood everything that I've said so far. Any question on you, Gilbert? Okay, thank you so much, Gilbert. Nat, do you have a question, or I don't know? Okay, your hand is down. Oh, yeah, you're following me. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Okay, all right. So moving on. Okay. So another thing is, an impact of web server attacks is that it could lead to a secondary attack from the website. So I'll explain this in a way that you understand better. Remember, like I've said, on a web server, you can choose to host more than one application on it. You can choose to host more than one domain on it. So if time should permit us, during one of the demo that I'll be showing you when it comes to web application attack, I will show something that will basically show this secondary attack from the website. So one thing that you notice, or one thing that you see, is that sometimes whenever, okay, you have, let's assume that you have about 5 different websites or 5 different applications hosted on the same web server. Now, on one of the websites, there happens to be a weakness in that website such that an attacker is able to exploit that weakness on that website to gain an access into the web server. What you notice is that based on the fact that the attacker has been able to gain an access to the web server, the attacker can choose to use that vulnerability that is present on just one of the websites and exploit that particular vulnerability, and then use that particular vulnerability to basically attack or exploit other websites that are being hosted on the server. Let me come again. Assume that you have about 5 different web applications hosted on a web server. You have 5 different web applications hosted on the web server. So now an attacker is able to see a weakness in one of the applications. Now the attacker chooses to exploit that weakness on that application, and then the attacker is able to gain an access to the web server. What you notice is that whenever the attacker has been able to gain an access to the web server, the attacker can use the vulnerability that is present on the first web application, such that whenever he or she is able to gain an access to the web server, it can then choose to use that same vulnerability in exploiting other applications that are hosted on that same server. So most likely, okay, if it happens to be maybe a Unix-based OS for the server, right? So maybe what you're talking about is /var/www/html, right? HTML. So just moving forward and moving backward, i.e., moving out of that folder and just checking, then you can see every other site that have been hosted on that particular server, most likely. And then the next thing is what you can then choose to, maybe you go ahead and you go and read all the maybe the configuration files, and like I've said, you could choose to maybe read the environment variables, you could choose to do whatever it is that you want to do. But what you notice is that based on the fact that just one application has a vulnerability, we can exploit that and use that vulnerability to basically exploit every other site or every other domain or every other application that are being hosted on that particular server. So another thing that you might notice when it comes to the impact of the web server attack is that it could lead to root access to other applications or servers. Like I said, should in case you have multiple applications hosted on that particular server, and they have been able to gain a server access because you are able to exploit one vulnerability from one of the applications, then most likely you'll be able to exploit others. Why? Because you already have an access to the web server, and all those applications, they are being hosted on the web server. So based on the fact that based on the fact that you now have access to the web server, then you can choose to do what? To exploit and interact with every other applications that are being hosted on the server. And also, the web server attack, some of the impacts is it could lead to data tampering and data theft. Yeah, because the moment you have an access to the web server, most likely you'll be able to you'll be able to edit files, you can edit files, you can download files, you can delete files, you can upload files, you can replace files, you can do a lot of things, you can do a lot of damage. And all of this happen because you have been able to successfully compromise or hack the web server. And the last thing is what? Reputational damage of the company. Yeah, because imagine so now imagine a top company, they get hacked, and then the attacker is being able to gain an access to the web server, and now the news becomes public. I mean, it's going to be a shame on those companies because they're going to lose a lot of they lose a lot of trust in their customers, in their clients, and all of that. So it could lead to financial loss and reputational damage to that particular company because people will not really trust them like before. What they will be telling you is that, they'll be telling you that they have been hacked before. So obviously, they can still be hacked again. So that's just it. Okay. So now, why are web server compromised? Why are they compromised? So one of the things that you notice is that web server could be compromised as a result of improper file and directory permission. Improper files and then directory permission. So for example, now, you have your application set up. They have been like set up on the web servers and the likes, and they have been exposed to the internet. But then instead of you having a permission in place such that, for example, now if people should go to /upload directory, by default, I am sure that as an organization, you do not want to be showing them all the contents of what you have in your upload folder. For example, now just going to the domain.com and then I put /upload, and then I'm able to like see every file that has been uploaded in that particular web server or that particular web application. Then the implication of that is what? There will be an issue, right? Because basically, if you should upload anything sensitive, I'll see it. If it is something that I'm not supposed to see, based on the fact that it has been uploaded into the upload folder, I'll be able to see it. So that particular situation now, that will be an improper file or directory permission. It won't be that whenever they go to the upload folder, you are showing them the entire content of what you have in your upload folder. It should not be like that. It is whenever they request for a particular resource, okay, maybe inside this upload folder, I'm requesting for a particular file, then you can choose to do or to show them the content of that particular file if they are authorized to see the content of that particular file. And then remember, just like in cybersecurity, we do not talk about authorization without talking about what? Authentication. So obviously they must have been authenticated and then they're authorized, then fine, then you can then show them the content of that particular file. So another reasons why web server gets compromised is because during the installation of the server, the administrator choose to use the default settings, i.e., the usage of default credentials. When we say default credentials, we mean maybe during the setup of that particular server, the default credential is maybe the username is admin and the password is admin. So when we're setting it up, instead of you to do what? To change that default credentials, just leave it that way and you continued and then use it that way and then you push it into production. Yeah, that would be an issue. Why? Because if an attacker is able to like see that, the very first thing that I can tell you is that the attacker, before he or she even tries doing any of the technical stuff, he or she, i.e., the attacker, will try out the default credentials first. That will be the first thing that he or she is going to try out. And then now, based on the fact that you, as the administrator that was setting that thing up, you chose to use the default credentials, the implication of that is what? The attacker will be able to log in by using that particular default credentials. Another reason why web server gets compromised is because the application, or when they were setting up the application, they just chose to enable a lot of services. So when we say enable a lot of services, by default, it is expected that any service that you're not using, you do what? You turn it off. Any service that you're not using, even if it is there and you know that you're not using it, what do? You turn it off. But now, instead of you doing that, you just do default, and then you move on. And then maybe on your web server, FTP port is open. Are you using it? If the answer is no, then there will be an issue. Why? Because you're not using it. So why is that particular port, why is it on? That would be a question, that maybe the administrator will have to answer, and then all of that. Okay, you have SSH ports open, you have RDP ports open. Are they in use? If the answer is yes, then fine, and that's okay. But then if the answer is no, then by default, it is expected that all those services should be turned off, in as much as what they are not being in use. Because the implication of you not turning it off is that what? You are increasing your attack surface. You are basically increasing your attack surface if you should choose not to turn it off. Basically, what you are doing is what? You are increasing your attack surface. But then if you are not using it and then it is off, it means that what? You are limiting the attack surface. So only the services that are being used are accessible. That is the only one that you have that is enabled. That is the only one that you have that is running. Another reason why web server can get compromised is because of security conflicts with business ease of use case. So when we say security conflicts between business ease of use case, what happened is that it has been noticed over the years that the more functionality you have on your application, and then the more you make your application easy to use, the more likely you are going to find a lot of vulnerability within that particular application. Now, I'll give you a good example. You are trying to access a website, right? And then maybe when you enter a username or when you enter an email address, and then you enter a password. Now, let's assume that the email address or the username exists on the application. And now, instead of you, okay, now let's imagine, like I said, let's imagine that the email address or the username exists on the application. So the username and the email exist on the application, but then the password is wrong. So instead of you saying that, oh, invalid credentials, then you're not coming here and you're telling them that, oh, wrong password for the user this. So maybe when when you sit down and then you try to interact with the developers of the application, and they're telling you that, oh, this application they are being made for maybe people that are old, like old people, and they don't want them to and then they don't want them to be like a bit stressed because for old people now there might be an issue of let's say memory overload and then all of that, right? So you don't really like want to like make them think and all of that, right? Okay. So now in real life, what happens is that is going to be a security issue. Now we are trying to make this application easier for people to use, such that whenever they enter a username that is present, a username that is correct, an email address that is correct, or a wrong password, they are telling them that, oh, the password is wrong, right? And they were asking you, and they are saying that the major reason why you are doing that is because you want the applications to be easier for good people to like use. They are considering them. Okay, maybe that's valid. But what happened is that in reality, that would be a security issue. Why? Because the attacker now has been able to discover a valid email account, a valid username. So what the attacker now needs to do is to do what? Is to find a way of finding the password for that particular username or email address. So now you're saying that, oh, you want the application to be easy to use because of old people. You don't want them, memory overload and all of that, which might be valid in some cases, right? But then the fact is that particular approach that you've chosen to use, i.e., you want the application to be easy for old people to use, has introduced a new concept of vulnerability, which is also a security issue. And then another reason why web server might get compromised is because of the lack of proper security policies, right? I.e., there is no policy in place, there is no written documentation in place to talk about the defensive mechanism that you have in place to like protect your servers from getting compromised. Nothing is documented, no procedure in place, no documentation to show that maybe there are some, maybe once in a month, maybe twice in a week, and all of that. Maybe you check for updates, you do this, you do that. There's no documentation in place, no security policies in place, nothing in place. The implication of that is that it is just a matter of time. The implication of that is what? It is just a matter of time. That particular server will get compromised. And then another one is what? Improper authentication with external system. And then another one that I also have is what? Default account having default password or no password at all. Yeah. So you see this when we get to the I'll be showing you a demo the moment I'm done with web server hacking. So I'll show you a demo, and then you see that sometimes like they might just set up a service or they might just like set up a service or something, and then you notice that, oh, that thing requires maybe a username, but then it does not like require a password. So you can actually like maybe access the service from that particular server without providing password at all. So that would be an issue. And the last thing that you have here is what misconfiguration in web server, operating system, and network. So now this can occur maybe by mistake, maybe as a result of oversight and all of that. So maybe what you're supposed to do is you have like some files, right? And then maybe some files. So maybe you have like files, maybe .htaccess files, some configuration files, and all of that. So by default, all those configuration files should not be something that someone will be seeing over the internet. It should not be accessible over the internet, which implies that there has to be a configuration in place to ensure that all those files cannot be accessible via the internet. But then, if maybe doing your setup, maybe you were tampering with a lot of, you were tampering with a lot of files during the setup, you edited a lot of things, you did a lot of things that you know, you did a lot of things that even you said you do not know. But then, as the result of it, you're like, okay, am I solving the problem I'm trying to solve? Yes, it is working. Is it working? It is working. And then you move on. What you've just done is that if maybe you're doing the process where where you were editing the files and all of that, you did a lot of file, permission changes and all of that. The implication of that is that you might make a file that is not supposed to be accessible publicly to become accessible publicly. I.e., those all those type of situation will be a kind of situation whereby you go to the maybe the site. Obviously, you have been authorized, like test the site, and then you start testing, and then you start discovering configuration files that you can download, that you can view, that you can see publicly. So all of that they happen and they occur as a result of what? Misconfiguration on the web server, the operating system, or the network itself. All right. So before I move on, I just want to be sure that you guys are following me and then you understood everything that I've said so far. Is there anything that I've said so far that maybe someone has an issue with, or maybe have questions or anything? Since you are following me, just drop a reaction. If you are following me, kindly drop a reaction. So I'll be sure that I'm not just talking to myself. Any question? All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So web server attack. So one of the web server attack that you might have is what we call DNS server hijacking. So when we say DNS, we are basically talking about domain name server. What does DNS do? What does it do? Basically, it resolves a domain name into its corresponding IP address. It resolves a domain name into its corresponding IP address. But now, when we say DNS server hijacking, basically what we are saying is that the attacker will try to look for a way and compromise the DNS server that the victim will be interacting with, such that whenever the victim comes to that network and then maybe tries to access a site, instead of the victim accessing the site from the legitimate server, the victim will be accessing the site from the attacker's server or from the attacker server, malicious server, all of that. So the way it works is that the attacker first has to find a way to manipulate or change the DNS settings such that if a user is trying to access maybe an application or a particular server, instead of the victim to be accessing the resource or the application from the right server, the victim will be accessing the resource from the attacker server. So DNS hijacking or DNS server hijacking is one of the things that can be done whenever they want to do something like phishing. So basically what the attacker will do is what? Ensure that he compromises the DNS server first. Then after compromising the web server, the DNS server, then if the user should come and then tries to access a request, or maybe tries to access a server, or tries to access a site or your application or whatever it is that you want to call it, then instead of the user being directed to the legitimate site, the victim will be directed to the attacker's site. And that is possible because the attacker has been able to change the mapping between the domain and the IP address, i.e., the attacker will just point the domain or the site that the user is trying to access. The attacker will point that site to the attacker's server IP address. And then on the what's it called now? On the attacker's server and all of that, the attacker will have set up a fake site, most likely something similar to the legitimate ones. So it's going to have it's going to have the same, you see the same page. If I see the same, you see the same page, you see the same settings. If there's an image, everything will look the same. But what you just don't know is that what the DNS server itself has been compromised, and then you're not interacting with the legitimate server. You're actually interacting with the fake site or the fake server. So like I said, DNS basically, basically maps a domain name to an IP address. So what the attacker just has to do is to do what is to ensure that it compromises that particular resolution such that the domain name of whatever it is that the user is trying to access will be mapped to an IP address that belongs to the attacker or a server that belongs to the attacker. Okay, so that's for DNS hijacking. Let's go for our 15-minute break now. So we'll be back by 11:25. Yeah, all right. It is 11:25. So I guess we've all taken the 15 minutes to maybe eat, maybe use the restroom or stretch our legs or do one or two things or stuff like that. All right, so I would like to confirm that you can still hear me and then you are back and you are with me. You can just drop an emoji to show that. All right. Oyinye, Mustafa, Fatima, Bright, Matthew. Hope you guys are with me. All right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. So I'll go back and share my screen. Okay, yeah, but then before I continue, I would also like to confirm that we are actually learning and then I'm not too fast, and then we're actually learning one or two things with everything that I've said so far. So if you've learned one or two things as usual, just drop me an emoji. Maybe just one thing, two things, three things, it's fine. Yeah, so just drop me an emoji, show a reaction to that. Then I can move ahead and continue with the class. Okay, all right. Okay, I've sent some emoji. All right, so I'll continue from where I stopped earlier. And then after this particular web server hacking, I will be showing you a demo of how this can be done, right? So by the time I'm through with this, presentation, I'll be showing you a demo on how web server hacking can be done. Okay. All right. So continue from where I stopped. We'll be talking about directory transversal attack. So basically, directory transversal attack occurs whenever an attacker tries to see if he can read files outside the web server root directory. So basically, this is being done by using a sequence of character that we refer to as dot, dot, and slash. So the attacker tries to use this sequence of character to see if he can read files outside the web server directory, the root directory of the web server. So basically, the root directory for the web server might be something like maybe var, www, html, and then yeah, and maybe the who knows, maybe okay, var, www, ht, okay. You can have HTML, right? And then you can have maybe dashboard, let's say a dashboard page .html. So what is directory transversal attack? So directory transversal attack occurs whereby, so maybe by default, when you try logging in after you register, you logged in, maybe what you see, you register on the platform, you log in, and then you are being redirected to the dashboard. Maybe what you see is www. Okay, let's start from the beginning. HTTPS, maybe this is what you see. Then you see www. Let's say the sitename.com slash, maybe what you see is what dashboard.html after you log in and then you get to the dashboard page. So directory transversal occurs whenever the attacker now tries to see, oh, can I try to access something like this Okay, this should be 2. I think I have 3 here. Okay, yeah, that should be 2. Okay, yeah. So directory transversal attack now occur whenever the attacker now tries to see, oh, can I try and see if I can access files that are outside this intended directory? So if you are familiar with, if you know about Linux system and Linux file system, then you know that you have, a lot of like maybe like places. You have the var, you have the home, and then you have the /etc, right? So now the attacker might then try to see, oh, what's going to happen if I should try and see if I can access files. So the attacker tries to use this sequence of character that you can see here, dot dot slash, dot dot slash. So the attacker can enter as many as he wants and then try to see maybe I can read the /etc/passwd file. So basically, now this /etc/passwd file, it's outside this particular web server directory, which is what you have here. It is outside this particular folder. It is basically this particular folder. So the attacker then, tries a lot of things and try to see if he can read files that are outside the server root directory. So if successful, then the attacker can then see the content of that file. If not successful, then obviously that will not be successful. But then if successful, then the attacker can then read out the contents of those particular files, right? Okay, so that's what we have for web server directory transversal attack. So like I said, the attacker used some sequence of like character dot dot slash to see if he can access files or directories that are outside the web server root directory. So most times, whenever this is to be done, most times it should be done via something that we call, okay, let me show it from here, via something that we call a trial and error method. So when I say trial and error method, it means that at this point in time, the attacker does not really know how many dot dot slash he has to put before he can start reading files from the server. So the attacker can choose to start with 1. If 1 does not work, then he will increase it to 2. If 2 does not work, he will increase it to 3. If 3 does not work, he will increase it to 4 until he actually gets some other things that, that can, who knows, that might make that particular thing to work. So in that particular situation now, we have a vulnerability that we call, I'm coming. You have a vulnerability that you call a directory transversal attack. So I came here and then I could see that Salman is raising up her hand. So let me see if I can unmute her. Allow mic. Oh yeah. So try to see if you can speak. I'm listening.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
The issue I have, something that is confusing me is that you said something about somebody getting access to files outside the web server or something.
Outside the
Does that mean the files outside, if the person gets access to it, it will still affect the website of the person?
Oh, wait. Let me be sure that I understand your question. Okay. So now this is it. By default, like what I've shown here, you're expected to be able to like access, this is like the server root directory. So everything that you have here, let's say /var/www, right? So now you can see pages or content that are inside this particular www folder, HTML and whatever it is that is there that they want you to see, then you can see it. So now what is directory transversal attack? That happens whenever you're able to read files that are outside the intended directory, the intended location. So anytime you're able to like read files that are outside this, for example, now I'm using this dot dot slash to come into this particular folder and then try to read a file that we call the passwd file. So I am outside this particular folder and then I am trying to move into another folder to read another file that is inside that. Then we can call that a classic directory transversal attack. Right? Because the files that I'm reading is not a part of the files that you have in this intended directory. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? Yeah, you can speak, Salman. Okay, yeah, it does make sense.
Okay, sir. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I was actually talking because you like your hands are still like raised. Well, it's fine. So if I answer your question, you can just put down your hands. Yeah. Okay. So I'll try to move on. Okay. Then you also have something we call a website defacement. I've talked about this briefly before. So when we say website defacement, basically what happens is that the attacker tries to see if he can find a way of changing the content that is being shown by the site itself, i.e., the attacker tries to see if he can change the content or the appearance of whatever it is that is being shown by the web application itself. Most times, not every time though, but then most times, whenever you see like attackers carrying out website defacement, so maybe they might be targeting, let's say, https://www. Let's say site name.com, and maybe they have a landing page, or they have like, yeah, maybe a landing page. So that might be index.html or maybe index.php or anything. So when we say website defacement, what you have here, by default, when you try to visit the application, maybe you get redirected to the index.html page, like the landing page, like the first page that you see. That's what you see, right? But then, whenever they conduct something known as, let's say, a defacement attack against this site, they might choose to do what? Change the content of what is being shown here in the index.html page, such that by the time you enter this into your web browser, instead of you to like see what you're supposed to see normally, like the content of the page normally, what you tend to see is what the attacker wants you to see. So in this case, of what we have here, basically everything that you have here, you are owned, and then this kind of so we say picture or image or whatever it is that you want to call it, and everything that you can see here is basically what the attacker wants you to see. But in this case, you notice that the target here is what is index.aspx, just like let's say like the landing page, like the first page that you see when you try to like visit the site itself. So instead of you to like see what you are supposed to see, instead of you to like see what you are meant to see, what you tend to see or what you will be seeing is whatever it is that the attacker wants you to see. So the attacker can choose to put whatever it is that he or she wants here. So that becomes a classic example of a website defacement attack, which is an example of a web server attack. Okay, and then you also have some other forms of attack. Okay, there is one that can occur as a result of misconfiguration, as a result of misconfiguration within your server. And a good example is what? Publicly accessible configuration files that can be downloaded and they can be read. By default, if your servers and everything are being configured properly, at your root domain, let's say https://www. Let's say site name.com, and then maybe slash whatever it is I can have there. You can have a lot of things there, right? But then if I should come here and then I'm typing web.config, and then you see me that I am able to download this particular web.config file, then obviously there's an issue somewhere. Because by default, I should not even be able to see this web.config file. Depending on how it is being set up, the web.config files can contain a lot of interesting information, in which I might show you. The web.config file could contain a lot of interesting information, such as what? Let's say usernames, IP address, maybe database related connection string, and a whole lot of interesting stuff like that. So this would be a classic example of what? Misconfiguration, because by default, I should not even be able to access this particular file. But then now I am able to access it, I am able to download it, I am able to see the content. Then there will be an issue somewhere, which will be falling under what? Misconfiguration, what you have here. So, and then a whole lot of other misconfiguration that could happen. And a good example is also like, you using default passwords, default usernames, like you using default credentials. Another one that, what's it called now? Another one that is a bit common, maybe not too common, but it is a bit common, is something we call a verbose or debug error messages. And a good example of that is what? It happens most times when you have your debug equals to true. So the implication of that is what? If there's an issue, maybe someone is doing something and then maybe someone typed something that does not exist. Instead of the person seeing something like maybe 404, page not found, then the person starts seeing information regarding your server, like server related information. Maybe this particular directory is unable to locate this particular file. And a whole lot of bubbles like error messages that can pinpoint a lot of things regarding your server, like the version, file type, maybe even the structure, database related information, and all of that. So that would be an example of what? That would be an example of verbals debug / error messages. By default, when you're, when you're in the production environment, now we're not talking about the staging environment now, right? So when you're in the production environment by default, the debug should be set to what? False, because you don't want people to be able to, to be seeing like server related, error messages that can help them in strategizing how they are going to launch an attack against your server or against your web application. So by default, debug set to false should be false. Debug should be set to false and not true. Okay. So and then you also have some other misconfiguration examples like remote administration function, unnecessary service enabled. I've talked about that before, or even misconfigured default SSL certificates. So if your SSL certificate are not configured properly, that could also, lead to an issue. Okay. Okay, I've talked about this verbal error message. Okay. So the next thing I'll be talking about is what you have here: web server attack, SSH brute force attack. So now you could have your web server, right, whereby you have some service enabled, like maybe the FTP service is enabled, the SSH service is enabled, and then just enable them like that. So when it comes to SSH brute force attack, basically what happens is that an SSH, when you talk about SSH, you're talking about what? Secure shell. And secure shell by default, it is encrypted, right? Because it allows you to basically gain a kind of remote access to a system, like a secure tunnel to a system. So you as a user, you can use like the SSH, maybe via the SSH port, if it is open and then it is configured, you could try to log in into a particular maybe server, right, via the SSH, based on the fact that because this SSH, like I said, it creates an encrypted kind of tunnel between you that are trying to access that server, between you and the server itself, actually. Okay, but then when we are not talking about SSH brute force attack, if you are not talking about SSH brute force attack, what you notice is that an attacker could decide to brute force the SSH login credential in order to gain an unauthorized access to an SSH tunnel. So I'll be showing you these. I'll be showing you this and some other things once I'm done with this. Once I'm done with this presentation. So now for SSH tunnel, as usual, if an attacker is able to brute force it and then gain an access, i.e., an unauthorized access, and then he or she is able to log in to that server, the implication of that is that the attacker could just decide to, okay, maybe what I will do is, I'll SSH into the server. Now that I have the credentials, now that I have gotten the credentials, I could try to, SSH into the server. Now after SSH, after logging in into the server, then the next thing is what I can just decide to maybe upload the malware on the server, and I'll leave it there. I can do a lot of things, right? Like I can actually do a lot of things because by the moment you're able to gain a valid credentials and then you're able to log in via the SSH into that particular server, basically it's as if you are using the command line interface of that particular server, which is a part of what I'll be showing you when we get there. Okay, now for SSH brute force, like I said, SSH stands for secure shell. It is an encrypted tunnel between, let's say, two devices, like between the user and maybe the web server. So SSH by default, it listens on port 22. Listens on port 22 here, so you can, basically just try to log in into the server via the SSH ports. Okay. Then you also have something we call web server attack, web server password cracking. So actually, in reality, what I'll be showing you, we'll be trying to get the credential for an FTP port, and also the SSH port, right? And then while doing that, we'll be performing something we call a brute force attack to like get the username and the password right. But one thing that you need to know is that there are like what I might be showing you depending on the time, right? I might be showing you for FTP, and then I might also be showing you for maybe SSH. But in reality, it could be done against some other protocols like what? Like SMTP, like RDP, and a whole lot of them like that. So in this case, what the attacker tries to do is that the attacker tries to see if he can exploit a weakness in order to find passwords of some common accounts that are related to some service on that particular server. So maybe you have an SMTP server, you have FTP server, you have SSH port open, and then you have a lot of things like that. Then the next thing is what? Oh, I might at first I want to try if there exists an account with the name of admin. Let's say admin, and then maybe password of admin. Yeah, username admin, password of admin, right? And then the attacker tries to see if he can use any of the common password to gain an access into any of the accounts. So some of the things that could be used is root, administrator, admin, demo, test, guest, QWERTY, and all of that. And actually, a lot of things can be done, but like at least for our level, yeah, these are like some of the things that can be done. Okay. So now an attacker can then choose to use different methods, such as what? Social engineering, spoofing, phishing, or even using maybe a Trojan horse or a virus to like try and see if he can, maybe get anything interesting about those that are using that particular server. So now the web server hosts, like I said, can host a lot of applications, right? Now the application name. Maybe you just do one or two information gathering, and then you come across some emails. You can just decide to do what? Oh, let's try out some social engineering method. Maybe just some phishing campaign. To at first, let's try to see if you can get valid what maybe usernames or something. Then you might want to try and fish maybe some of the services that they are using, or try and fish some of the softwares that they are using and all of that, just to see if you can get some valid what maybe usernames. Then after that, then you might want to start or try out an option of what web server password cracking by using some commonly used or commonly found password, such as password, root, administrator, and the likes. So this is also another example of web server attack. Okay, I'll be showing you this so we can move on from there. Okay, yeah. So I talked about some of this before. I said, you can choose to guess, right? So maybe after we did our phishing campaign, we did our social engineering campaign, we came across by impersonating some of the brands or some of the softwares that they use, right? They were able to like find some maybe some names or some possible usernames. Then the next thing is what I can even try and see if we can use some of the usernames that we found as some of the password, just to like try and see if it exists. And if it is successful, obviously you get an access to the web server. And if it is not successful, obviously, you won't get an access to the web server. So you have guessing, whereby you just try to like guess for some of the commonly used password. So you just try that out on some of the accounts that you have. So you have guessing. They also have like a dictionary attack, whereby you have a file that contains like words, just like a normal dictionary that it contains like words. When we say words, like something that really makes sense to you. So now the dictionary will be created based on based on, let's say, like the attackers and maybe mindsets, based on the attackers logic and all of that. So the attacker like creates a list or a file that contains predefined combination of words that could be used as password. And then the attacker just tries to see if he can run that file against that particular user names that he has gotten before for maybe the social engineering campaign or for maybe the phishing campaign. Then you also have the brute force attack. That one tries out a whole lot of things. So when you say dictionary attack, right, and when you say brute force attack, major difference between that is a brute force attack is going to try every possible combination. So if you are using character A to Z and you are using a length of, so let me just do this here. So if you are using, let's say, character small letter A to small letter Z, and then you want the length to be and then you want the length to be, let's say, 5. Brute force attack, small letter A to Z. Okay. So brute force attack will start by using AAA 1 2 3 4 5, then move to AAAA AB. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exactly. Until it gets to Z, 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 because the length is 5. So it's going to try out every possible combination of whatever character it is that you're using. So that would be a classic example of a brute force attack. The dictionary attack, you have a list that contains possible, maybe possible password. Maybe you have one as root, you have another one as, maybe you have root, maybe you have admin, maybe you have password, and the likes, So this would be example. So you have a file that contains all of this. So that would be a classic example of what? Of a dictionary attack, because you are using a file that contains a list of what possible user, possible passwords, and all of that. Okay. But for brute force attack, like I said, it's going to try out every possible combinations of whatever character it is that you've given it. And depending on the length and all of that, so use that to like get the password. And the last one that you have here is what we call a hybrid attack. So if we're talking about the hybrid attack, where from the name, it kind of combines both the dictionary attack and then the brute force attack. So it combines the two of them together. And then one thing that you notice, if you're combining these two together, is that you tend to have a more what's it called now? What's the right word now? You tend to have a more I won't say to be easier. Okay, it could be easier actually. It could be easier. In reality, it could be easier, right? Because what you try to do is you try to ensure that you create a dictionary based on some things that you know about your target. And after creating a dictionary, then you try to perform a brute force attack by using all those things that you know about your target, a combination of all those things that you know about your target. So that would be a classic example of an hybrid attack. So the hybrid attack just combines the dictionary attack and then the brute force attack. Okay, so you also have something we call the web server attack, server-side request forgery attack. But before I get there, let me be sure that you guys are with me and then you understand what I've said so far. Are you guys with me? Any question? So that's what I'm trying to do here. Okay, but why is it that I'm seeing I'm seeing a low, should I say like a low reaction today? Gilbert, Matthew, are you guys with me? Are you guys with me? Oh, Kenneth. Oh yeah. Oh, so I guess you want to speak. So I will yeah, thank you. I will unmute you. Wait. Kenneth, like do you have a question or I just don't feel the reaction for what I said earlier? So let me see if I can unmute you. So if you have a question, you can just raise up your hand and let me answer that before I move on. Oh, kindly explain directory transversal attack again. Okay, oh, I'm coming on. I think I saw another. Yes, I'm with you. Oh, all right, thank you. So someone sends a message. Toluwalope Akande. I'm coming. Toluwalope Akande. Okay, yeah. So I'll explain that again, and then after that, tell me if you understand or not. So let me just go up, go up, go up, go up, go up. All right. So when you say directory transversal attack, it basically means a type of attack that allows you to access files outside the web server root directory. It just allows you to access files outside the web server root directory. So I gave an example of what you have here, whereby we have this particular root directory here. So all our, what's it called now? All our sites, they are inside var www. And then for HTML, so if you are trying to like access, maybe you are trying to like access the dashboard page, then this will be the particular file that will be shown to you, which is what I have here. Basically what I have here. So now when you say directory transversal, it allows you to read files outside this root directory. So I can choose to, instead of reading from the HTML, I can try and see if I can read from www. If there's any file there that I can read, I'll try to see if I can read it. So I'll move outside this HTML folder and I'll move to the www folder. I'll move outside. I'm not like moving inside. I'm moving outside that folder. Then I'll try to see if I can access any server, any files from this www folder. Then after that, I can also choose to move outside this www folder and move into the var folder and try and see if I can access any files from it. But in the example, in the case of what I gave here, I'm trying to see if I can actually move outside this entire folder, this entire part. I want to see if I can move outside this entire part. I want to move outside all of them completely and then move into this particular part that you have here or this particular folder and then try to read this particular file that you have here, which is what /etc/passwd, which is the example of what I gave here. So all I'm just doing is what I'm trying to see if I can read files outside this entire root directory or web server directory. So that would be a classic example of directory transversal. So I wanted to confirm, do you understand that now? Is it Tolu Alope or Tolu Lope? Sorry, let me confirm again. Yeah, Tolu Alope, yeah. So now, do you understand that now, Tolu Alope? All right. Okay. Any other question? I don't think there's any other question. You can just raise up your hand if you have any question. All right. So moving on to where we stopped. Yeah, SSRF, which is what we call the server-side request forgery attack. So what we need to know about the SSRF attack is that it is a type of attack that allows you to manipulate either a web server or a web application to make a request into his own internal server and fetch files for you. I'll give an example. When we say SSRF, server-side request forgery, I'm just trying to see if I can manipulate a web server or maybe an application into making a request to maybe fetch an internal files within itself or making a request to basically interact with another server, a third-party server. So for SSRF now, it could be something we call maybe local or remote or yeah, local remote, stuff like that. So in this case, what you notice is that the attacker tries to see if he can make this server to try and request a resource from his own internal database on behalf of the attacker. So by default, you cannot pass through the firewall because obviously, the firewall will have been configured such that there are some what's it called now? There are some traffic that it will not allow through based on its own configuration. So it might be like maybe anytime you see a request that is asking you to, I've seen this before, so let me just show you from here. So to be like anytime you are trying to make a request and then it is trying to fetch this type of, it's trying to like fetch this type of file, then this will trigger a firewall. And a good example of that is what your Cloudflare. So you might see something like maybe they notice something suspicious about maybe a traffic or whatever it is that you're sending, and then you see the Cloudflare logo or the Cloudflare message or whatever it is that you want to call it. So obviously you cannot pass through the firewall. So in that case now, what the attacker tries to do is that the attacker will try to see if he can manipulate a web server itself on making that request on behalf of him to his own internal system, but in this case, a database. So if that process is successful, then the database can then respond with the data that you need. And then the attacker just fetch the data from the web server itself without directly passing through the firewall. That would be a classic example. So SSRF can be used for some other things like port scanning. So you can use it for like port scanning. You can use it for IP address discovery. So if you want to discover some things internally, for example, now on this internal network, you want to know maybe on this internal network, what are the ports that are opened? What are like the services that are running? What IP address is running what or whatever it is? Then you can try to exploit a server-side request forgery vulnerability to achieve all of that. And as usual, you can also use it to like read, you can also use it to like read web server files and then bypassing firewalls and then all of that. So what makes server-side request forgery? What is it? It is that it is a type of attack that can be carried out such that the attacker is able to manipulate a web server into making a request on his own behalf to fetch resources internally on the attacker's behalf, or even this web server to try and communicate with another external server and then fetch resources from that external server on behalf of this attacker. So that would be a classic example of what server-side request forgery. Questions? Any question? If you are with me, drop an emoji, drop a reaction, and all of that. If you are with me, yes. All right. So no questions so far, right? Right. That's nice. Okay. So I think I'll soon be done, so we can move to the practical. So I've talked about these. Yeah. So web server attack tools. So the, the thing is, you actually have, you have a lot of them actually, right? We have a lot of them. Yeah. But in this case, I'll talk about some that you have here. Metasploits. There's something we call a Metasploit framework. So which is like a framework. Yeah, it is a framework. Metasploit is a framework that you can basically use to like perform, let's say, a web server exploitation, even web application exploitation. You can use a Metasploit framework for that. So it is like I'll be using it in one of the practical, but not under this. So when we get there, you see more about that. But then Metasploit is a framework that can be used to fully automate the exploitation of web server. So you can use it against maybe SSH, HTTP, even WordPress related maybe sites that have been hosted on servers. You can use it to like attack servers directly. You can use it to like attack web applications. You can use it for scanning. You can use it for a lot of things, even password brute forcing and all of that. You can use it for a lot of things. So one of the tools is what we call Metasploit. Yeah. So yeah. So another one is okay, I think that's all you have here, but that's fine. That's the only one that I have here. All right. So we've talked about, we've talked about the different web server attack. Now let's talk about web server attack counter measures. Web server attack counter measures. So whenever we are talking about the counter measures, we are just looking at what we can do to basically limit some of this attack against our own server. So first one is that you can try to apply something that we call a restricted access control list and block remote registry administration. So what you might want to do is just ensure that you implement a good and a proper access control list. And then you might want to like block some, maybe you might want to like block maybe people logging in as admin remotely to a system. In fact, most systems as nowadays now, you cannot SSH as root into them. Even if you have the correct usernames and password, it won't go. Why? Because that particular functionality has been blocked. So I can't say SSH and I'll say maybe root at my IP and press enter and try to SSH into the system. It will not go. Why? Because that particular thing has been blocked. And a whole lot of things that can be done. Another thing is, you may also want to ensure that you secure your standalone servers. So you might want to ensure that you do that. Another thing that you could try to do is, you might want to ensure that security-related settings are configured properly. So you configure them appropriately. And then the access to the metadata file is restricted and then adding with NTFS permission. So now, if all these things are being done, your configuration files, like I said before, your configuration files by default, it will be on your server and everything, but it should not be accessible publicly. Like this example that I gave here, me being able to like see the web.config file publicly, that would be an issue. Why? Because I can basically read out the content. By default, it should be there, but you won't be able to see it. Why? Because of the configuration that is being placed on that particular file. Okay, and some other things like remove unnecessary fast filter from the web server. So if there's any like filter that are unnecessary, that are not needed, just remove all of that. Another thing is, you want to ensure that you remove all unnecessary file sharing, including the default administration shares, if not required. So like I do say, is that anything that is not needed, whether it is a file or a service, anything that is not needed, whether it is a file or a service, then just ensure that you disable it or you delete it. For example, now, on a web server, why should I be seeing a zip file of all your entire code base? So maybe at a point when you were doing, maybe you were doing some cleaning up and everything. So maybe what you decided to do is that you decided to like back up your, some of your all the files and everything. Ideally, they do that if you are into like system let's say system admin, or you are into like hosting, so you host stuff, yeah, like a network system admin rather, yeah. And then you do all this kind of stuff. So when it comes to you trying to, maybe you're trying to like edit some sensitive stuff or maybe some sensitive file, most time they will tell you that ensure that you back up the former one that you're using. They tell you that you back up the former one. Why? So when you back up the former one, most likely what you tend to see from the attacker's point of view is that they might change the name. Let's assume that the name of that thing is, let me just pick one. Um, web, let's say web underscore configuration dot maybe dot config file. So now by the time they are telling you to back up this former one, you might see them changing this from web underscore configuration dot config to maybe something like web. So you see them changing into something like maybe web underscore configuration, maybe dot config dot back, or you see them doing something like maybe web underscore configuration, then let's say maybe dot config and maybe dot old. Okay, I understand that maybe when you are doing your maybe when you are doing your configurations, you're trying to like edit all of that, so you decided to back all of this up. But then the moment you are done, why should all of this still be in your server? If it is still in your server, the implication of that is that an attacker that knows how to enumerate well will surely see all of this, even though he or she might not be able to see all of this, depending on your configuration and everything. It might be able to see all of this, especially if you have done like, if you have like mess up with the permissions and all of that, then the attacker will be able to see all of this and there will be an issue. Or you are zipping everything together. So you are turning it from maybe .old and then you are turning it to maybe .zip. There will be an issue because all these things now, the attacker, if he knows how to enumerate well, he might be able to find all of them. By default, he might not be able to find this, right? But then he might be able to find this. So once he's able to find this, what's going to happen? The implication of that is that whatever content it is that you have here, he can access it and he can have an idea of whatever it is that is going on your server. And that will be the issue, right? Okay. So another thing that you can try to do is you can ensure that you relocate the sites and virtual directories to non-system partitions, and then you use IIS web permission to restrict access. Exactly. So just ensure that on each of these files that you have here, you have the right access to them. The same access or the same permission that you have here should be the same thing that you have here. And most times, except if it is really, really necessary, it is best that you just remove this or you move this. You can have the copy somewhere, it's fine. That's okay. But then what we are saying is that the exact permission that you have here that will not make this to be accessible is the exact thing that you should have here and you should also have here. So they should have the same thing. It's not like this will not be visible and then this will be visible and this will be visible. There will be an issue if that is, if that is what you have there. So another thing that could be done is you can ensure that you remove all unnecessary IIS script mapping or optional file extension in order to avoid exploiting any bug in the SAP extension that handles this type of files. So if you know that maybe there's some like maybe script that contains well, by default they should not contain, but let's just assume that you have one, maybe a script that contains something really, really sensitive and all of that. Then you ensure that you check your configuration again to be sure that the exact and the expected permissions are being put on all of them, such that it won't be as if your server is interpreting, is interpreting some of those extensions as something else and then serving the content out to them. So you want to ensure that they have the right permission. Okay. I think, okay, yeah. Web server security tools. Okay, yeah. So these are under like web server security tools, which is what we call Fortify Wait, there's someone raising up his hand. Okay, no, okay, someone is raising up his hand. Yeah, I think I already know. All right, so Bright, coming. I will unmute you very soon so that you can speak. All right, so Bright, you can speak.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Toby, and
Yeah,
thank you so much.
good afternoon. Yeah, you're
So
welcome.
I have two questions, right? One is I want to get clear. So when you say use the word SSH, so when you say you SSH, like I was lost. I didn't understand what you
Oh,
mean by
okay,
when you say
okay.
you SSH.
All right.
Uh,
So
the first
okay,
one.
okay.
The second one is I've been following the examples I've been given, right? And
Okay.
I've been which have to do with the web with web pages and web application. I'm like
Okay.
thinking, how about a mobile application, right? How can it be hacked? Or is it that the mobile application is more safer than web application? Because I know
Okay.
once I'm doing something on web application, I could just open my network tab and be seeing the endpoint that is being called. But on mobile,
Exactly.
I cannot see them. So how is it
Hmm.
that is it that is more first of all demystify me? Is it that mobile is more safer than web application? Or and two, how can is it that what is applicable to web is applicable to mobile? And
Okay.
lastly, is how can I see mobile the endpoint? How can I be able to see it? Is it possible for me to
Ah,
see it?
you can. Yes, you
And
can.
I've
Yes.
asked several things. I don't know if
All right. All right. Thank you so much for the question. I actually love that question. Like, sounds really, really interesting. Sounds really, really interesting. All right. But I'll start with the first one. Now, the first one that talks about the SSH. I intentionally prepared for that.
yeah.
So I'm going to show you an example of that, actually, a practical example, so you understand better. But when I say I will SSH in, it means that I will try to see if I can log in via SSH to that particular server. So I'll be typing a command like, sorry, this is autocorrect or whatever it is I want to call it. Small letter S, small letter S. So I'll be typing a command like SSH, and then you see me typing maybe a username at the IP address of the server. Then I'll do all of that. When we get to the practical, I'll do all of that. But basically, what I mean by that is that I'll try to see if I can log into the web server via SSH. So in like simple terms, that is what it means. When I say I will try to SSH in, it means that I will try to see if I can log into that particular thing via the SSH, which is what? Secure shell. But to do that, I need to have a username. I need to know the IP address of, or maybe the domain of the server, and then I need to have a password, a valid password. Does that make sense? So that would be for your first question. Now, for your second question, that one talks about, I think your second question talks more about web application. So I think, okay, yeah, so your second question was talking about if web application is like safer than mobile or stuff like that. But one thing that you need to know is that it's not like web application is safer than mobile, and it's not like mobile application is safer than web. Most times, it depends on how they are being developed, how they are being developed. Now, for mobile app, right, whereby you have the APK file, hope you know, okay, you might not know about this, so I'll just talk about it. Hope you know that from the application file that you have, let's say the application is sample.apk, which is obviously going to be for a Android app, right? Hope you know that you can actually reverse this to get the source code. You can reverse that, and then you get the source code from the APK
No,
file that you have. What do you say?
no, I said no, I don't.
Yeah, but now I'm telling you now that you can do that. At least something very, very close to the source code by using a tool like what? Hydra. So this can do that for you. That's just by the way. I won't really go deep into that. So whether a web application is safer than a mobile application, or whether a mobile application is safer than the web application, it all depends on how they are being built. I've seen a lot of funny things before, but obviously I won't talk about that. But whether it is being secure or not, it still depends on how it is being built. Does that make sense? Yeah, and then to your very last question, I think you talked about how on your normal web application, right? Maybe you try to like access a site or something. You can just go to your inspect and you try to look at your maybe your network, the network tab, right? And then you can see all the endpoints that that thing is calling and the likes. The truth is that something similar can be done for what? Can be done for a mobile app. But then obviously I won't go deep into that. So basically what you do is we kind of use like there are like tools that we use for that, right? So we set up like maybe a virtual mobile device on a VM. like maybe virtual machine or virtual box. We find a way of installing that device on that virtual machine or virtual box, and then we set up proxies, right? Thereby, we'll be capturing for every single thing that we are doing, all the requests that have been sent, the same way that you see it for your web application, we'll be seeing that for the mobile app. So maybe when I click on the login, so maybe it is sending, a request to maybe sample.com at endpoints like maybe slash login. By the time you do your configuration and then you virtualize an Android device on a virtual machine or a VMware, and then you set up proxies and use tools like Bobsuit and all of that, all of this can be seen for the mobile app too. Every single thing can be seen. Does that make sense? But obviously for like mobile app, we call this all of this will be under like dynamic. Everything here will be under dynamic. And what you have here will be under what? Static. That's just by the way. I don't really want to go deep into that, but it can be done. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Please, one final stuff, one final question, please.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's
You
fine.
said depending on how it was built. So
Yes.
I'm just curious, right? Is there any pointer, anything I can see? Oh, okay, this is a vulnerability. This is not a vulnerability. Like any pointer that I could use to like be some kind of indicator to see how it is being built and so detect if there's an issue or not.
Well, okay, I'll just answer your question. I'll be careful what I'm saying, obviously. Okay, so now the thing is, just like with every other thing that you do, with every other kind of maybe ethical hacking stuff that you do, you need to carry out like some tests on that thing. So one of it is maybe when you pick the mobile application itself and then you try to do this, and then you start seeing things like hard-coded credentials, hard-coded API keys, and then start seeing a lot of interesting things. And then maybe you also start seeing maybe hard-coded URL leading to, or hard-coded URL for an unprotected S3 bucket. You know, all of these are issues. All of these, I would say, they are issues. And how do you get them? You get them by just doing what? By finding a way of converting this APK file into something close to the source code. And then you can see all of this. Then there'll be an issue. But like I said, I won't really go deep because it is actually intentional. I'm not really going to go deep. But yes, there are like ways. All you have to do is what? You carry out a test on it. The same way in which maybe you want to like look for a vulnerability within a web application or a website, obviously with permission. What do? You carry out a test on it, right? It's the same thing that applies to mobile application. You do what? You carry out a test on it. So now, depending on what you see, most times what you see depends on how that thing is being built. Does that make sense? Applications like mobile app, it could be built using maybe Flutter, maybe Kotlin, and all of that, right? So the code and everything that you see depends on how that thing is being built, the programming language that they use for it, the logic behind the person that built that thing, and a whole lot of things that you consider. But the bottom line is what? You carry out a test on it to know that, oh, if this thing can be seen or not. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Toby, Mr. Toby. So just a quick one, please. So I know you said want to go deeper, but I know if I should come for the training, if I register, I hope you are going to go deeper, sir.
Obviously, I will. Obviously, I will.
No
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're very, very welcome. I'm not sure if I even get your name.
My name is Bright.
Right. Yeah. Nice. Okay. So I'll take the last question because I still have a lot to talk about. Okay. Ojo Eric. So I'll try to unmute you so you can speak. Okay. Ojo Eric, rather. I've unmuted you. I can't hear you. Eric.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
I can hear you now. Yes, I can.
Good afternoon. I had a question, but I understand it now.
Oh, you had a question before, but you're asking it
Yes.
now. Right.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. That's nice. Thank you. So you can put down your hands now, because I'm actually looking at it for people that have questions. Yeah. Okay. So I think I'm almost done with web server hacking before I show you the demo. Okay. So also for the web server security tools, you have a lot, right? You have Aku, Netix, Web Vulnerability Scanner. which is like a tool that you can use to basically scan for vulnerabilities on web site and web pages. You have 45 web inspects, which is also a tool that you can use to like carry out an automated dynamic testing to discover issues like configuration related issues, and then all of that on a particular maybe web application or website. I have a lot of them like that. Okay, yeah. So before I move to web application, now this is the point where I will be showing you the demo for web server hacking. Okay, so I think we should go for now. We'll not be going for a let me see. Okay, no, I can finish it. Yeah, I'll try to finish it. So I'll try and do the demo now. That is, I'll try to like do the practical now, and then okay. So I'll try to do the practical now. So I need this. So can you confirm that you can see my screen? Because I'm doing something else now. So can you see this? Okay. So I'll try to do the demo now. So what I want to use for you is this. Debug your server. The tissue substance. Another in your van. Then I shall be. Okay, I don't this one now. I'll need it later. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Can you please confirm that you can see my screen? If you can see my screen, yeah, like what am I? Sure. We couldn't access your camera. Oh, okay, yeah. What's wrong with the camera? I really have no idea. Oh. Yeah, I just noticed that now. My camera went off due to a reason I don't really know. But can you see my screen? Like, I mean, can you see my Parrot terminal? My Parrot terminal. Can you see that? Hello, please. I need to be sure that yeah. No. What about now? Can you see this now? Can you see it now? Can you see it now? No. Okay, I'm coming. Okay, let me see. No, okay, yeah. Maybe what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen. I stopped sharing my screen. Interesting. Sorry. I'll share my screen again. Entire screen. Okay, entire screen. Share. Okay, now I'm sharing my screen now. Okay. Now, can you see my Parrot terminal now? Can you see it now? Can you see my Parrot terminal now? Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I can start with the demo that I'm about to show you. All right. So now, before showing you the demo, this is the idea of what I want you to have in mind. I want you to have this idea in mind. So you're able to access, you're able to like discover a web server. Like I said, web server, you host web applications on web server. You host web applications on web server. Okay. So you're able to come across a web server, and then on that web server, you were lucky enough, and then you were able to like come across the IP address of the web server. Now, after coming across the IP address of this web server, then you were able to see all the ports that are open on the web server. So when I say ports, they're like a point of connection, yeah, to something, like a door to something, yeah. And then all those ports, obviously there will be a service running on them. So you are able to like come across the web server. Then the web server obviously, has some applications on it. And this same web server, you're able to like come across the IP address of that web server. Then after that, then you were able to see the open ports and the services that are running on it. When I say open port, like I said, you're like gateway to that thing, to like that particular server. So you could see the open port on it. And then you could see that it is running, that particular web server is running FTP and then SSH. So the demo that I'm to show you here talks about how you can then decide to attack the FTP and the SSH service that is running on this web server. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? How you can exploit, exactly, how you can exploit the FTP and SSH that you have open on that particular web server. So that is what the demo is to show you. All right. So now we are here. Okay. So as usual, we came across, okay, we came across the web server, and then it has an IP address of 10.10.1.11. Now on this web server, we could see that port 22 is open, and then port, that is the FTP, the SSH port is open, and then the FTP port is open. So port 21 is open, port 22 is open. So how do we go about attacking it? So that is what we want to do now. So as usual, to just like for sanity check, we try to see if we can actually interact with the web server. I can just try to ping it, and I then, basically what I did here, you can see this that I did here, right? Basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to see if I can communicate with the web server. So that is why I am running a ping command. So I'm just trying to see if I can like communicate with it. Does that make sense? I'm trying to see if I can communicate with it, if I can interact with it. So that is why I'm running this ping. So this ping, basically, what it does is that it will be sending requests to this particular server on this particular IP address, and then it will be rushing out for the response. Now, aside that, notice that I put a -C, and then I put a 3 as the value here. It means that I want ping to send just 3 requests. I want ping to send 3 requests to the server on 10.10.1.11. So ping will be sending an ICMP echo request to this particular server. It will be sending 3 ICMP echo requests. That is why if you look at the response, you can see 3 different responses here. You can see 64 bytes from the server, ICMP, and you can see 1, you can see 2, and then you can see 3. So I'm sending 3 requests, so I should receive what? 3 reply or 3 response. Does that make sense? So now I'm sending 3 requests, which correspond to 3 packets, and then I'm receiving 3 response. Why? Because I'm sending 3 requests. And as you can see here, 0% packet loss, which means that all the requests that I sent, I received a response for it. Does that make sense? Okay, so all the requests that I sent, I received a response for it. All right. Now the next thing is what? I will try to see if I can. Okay, let's just do this. I'll try to see if I can scan this IP address of the server, which is what? 10.10.1.11. Does that make sense? So I'll try to see if I can scan it. So I will attempt to scan it. So I'll be putting the IP address of the web server here, 10.10.1.11. Can you see that? So now, why am I trying to scan? I am trying to scan so that I can see if the FTP service or the SSH service, if any of them is running, or if the ports are open. So if it is open, then the next thing is what? How do I gain an access to this particular server via the what? SSH port and the FTP port. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? Okay. All right. Just to be sure. All right. So as usual, I'll try to scan that. And then for sanity check, I'll just put hyphen V here. So for now, just know that I'm putting this hyphen small letter V here because I want to see everything that this particular tool is doing. In this case, I am running an Nmap scan. Nmap means network mapper, which is a tool that you can use for your scanning. I am using hyphen small s capital letter V because I want you to discover every service version that is running on this particular server here, which is 10.10.1.11. In this case, I am using 10.10.1.11 as a web server. Does that make sense? Okay. Does it make sense? Do you understand everything I've said so far? Reactions. Reactions to show that you're following me. Oh, okay. Thank you. Rashida, thank you so much. Okay. Okay. So now I'll try to then scan this and try to see all the port and services that are open and they are running. So Nmap is the tool. Hyphen small letter S capital letter V because I want to perform a service version scan to determine the ports that are open and the versions or the services that are running on all those ports. And then hyphen small letter V because I want to see what Nmap is doing one after the other. Then I can press enter. And then as Nmap is running, I can see the results. As Nmap is running, I can basically see the results. So now this might take a while, right? So in this case, I can see a lot of things are open. I know, I understand, no issue, no problem, it's fine. So we just wait for it. So at this point, it has been able to discover some ports that are open. Port 445, port 3389, port 139, port 22, port 21, port 80, and port what? 135. So it could see that, oh, all these ports are running. So it has discovered the open ports. So now it is now attempting to carry out a service version scan, which is what I told you to do when I ran IPNSV. I'm telling it to scan the services or the version scan, the service version scan. So it will go ahead and then do all of that. And then the moment it is done, then we look at some of the results that we have, and then we try to see if we can actually gain an access to this web server by attacking either the FTP port or the SSH port. So let me confirm that you guys are still with me. Okay, you're still with me. Okay. So let's go back. So this might take a while. It should not really take much time, but it might take a while. Okay. So how far have you gone? So just press enter once. Okay, yeah, it is done. So in this case, what we could see is that web server that is present on 10.10.1.11 has the below port opened. You can see the FTP ports opened. You can see the SSH ports opened and the version of the SSH that is open. You can see the HTTP ports and you can see all other, all other ports that are opened. You can see all of that. Yeah, that's fine and that's okay. Now the next thing is what? We know that the FTP port is open. Then how do I attempt to gain an access to the server 10.10.1.11 via FTP? That is the question. And that is what we are going to try and answer. So now to gain an access to this particular server, which I'm using as my web server in this case, on 10.10.1.11, then we can try out a lot of things. So let me come back to my notes here and then show you some things. So when it comes to FTP, which you call your what? Your file transfer protocol, which is just like a server that stores or a part for storing files or a server that stores files. So this allows you to access files, just for files and transmission and all of that for files, right? So now for this FTP that is opened, we can decide to do some things to try and see if we can access this FTP. And one of the things that we can decide to do is what we call, one is called anonymous FTP login, i.e., I want to try and see if I can access the file transfer protocol via me logging in as an anonymous user. And another thing that we can try to do is what we try to brute force. So let's say brute forcing. So these are like valid set of things that we can do. So in my own case, well, we can decide to do this and we can decide to do this. So I'll be fast about this because I have a lot to talk about. So now for anonymous FTP login, basically the idea is simple. The idea is that you try to see if you can log in as an anonymous user. Anonymous user. So if that is successful, then it implies that when they were setting up the FTP server, they enabled anonymous login. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay. So I guess you guys are still with me. Okay. So now, so let's try to see if you can access this server via logging in as an anonymous user. So to do that, I'll just type FTP and then, okay, I'm coming Control L. Yeah. So I'll just type FTP and then I will provide the IP address of the server itself, which is what 10.10.1.11, as you can see from up. 10.10.1.11, right? 10.10.1.11. So we try to see if we can log in as an anonymous user. So I'll just type FTP and then the IP. So I want to see if I can connect to the FTP server via 10.10.1.11, logging in as an anonymous user. So I'll type FTP, I'll type the IP, and then I'll press enter. So now what you notice is that by the time you do that, I hope this thing is still running. Uh-oh, why? Okay, might have to give it a minute. It's doing all these interesting things. Yeah, I know it won't connect. Yeah. So I'll just wait for this to finish. Okay. Zoom. So I'll just wait for this. It should not really take much time. Yeah. Not really take much time. So can you make it fast? Make it fast. Make it fast. Make it fast. We do not have all the day. Make it fast. Okay. Nah. Make it fast. Oh, I don't have all the time in the world. Make it fast. Okay, just give it a while. Just want to restore the state of this machine so we can use it. But then why this one is trying to come back up, I hope you understood everything that I've said so far. Drop emojis, reaction to show that you're following me, to show that you understand what I've said so far. Drop emojis, reaction, and all of that. Yeah, I know. Okay. Okay, so we are back. Okay. So now we try this again. Sorry, exit. Control L. Okay. So we try that again. We try to see if you can log into the FTP, to that server via the FTP port that is opened. So I type FTP, I type the IP address of the, of the server, and then I press enter. And what you see here is what? It is asking for a name. So for anonymous user FTP login, you are expected to enter a username that is known as what? Anonymous. So you type that as the username. So just come here and then you type anonymous as the username. Can you see that? And then you do what? You press enter. And what can you see here? It says anonymous access allowed. Send identity, email name as password. Now for the password, the sweet and then the interesting thing about anonymous FTP, login is that for the password, don't type anything there, just press enter. Don't type anything there at all, just press enter. So in this case, I'll just come here and I'll do what? I'll press enter. I'll not type anything there at all. I will not type anything in the password field. And I'll do what? I'll press enter. And what can you see? This particular message here that says what? User logged in. So this implies that what? You have been able to gain an access to this particular server, which is 10.10.1.11. Now, this was possible. Why? Because this server allows anonymous FTP login. It allows it. So that's like the issue with this. The server allows anonymous FTP login. So by default, not like by default, but nowadays we are setting up your We are setting up your FTP server. One thing that you want to do is what? You want to ensure that you do what? You unselect or you disable anonymous FTP login. You do not select it at all. You disable it. So if you have done that, then this particular anonymous FTP login will not be possible. It will not be successful. Does that make sense? So now in this case, we have been able to gain an access to the server, which is 10.10.1.11, via us exploiting anonymous FTP login. So you can type ls and then it will show you all the content on that particular server. So as usual, I will exit and show you the other method. So the second method that you have here, before I show you any question, the second method that you have here, okay, yeah, right. I will listen to you. Let me unmute you. I'm coming. Just give me. Okay.
I'm already unmuted.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. Go on and talk. Okay.
So their anonymous login, right? Is it
Yes.
is there anything that before you use the anonymous to log in, right? As in the anonymous means to log in, is there any
Okay.
indicator, anything that showed you that okay, there is this particular server allows anonymous login, or you just out of intuition, you just checked
Okay.
to
Yeah.
see?
That's very. I love that. That's a very, very good question. So by default, you might not be able to find an indicator to tell you that you should try this. But you, as a tester, you have to try every single thing that you know. Does that make sense? Does it
Yes,
make
yes, it
sense?
does.
So
Yes, it does. It does.
you as a tester, you might not be able to find an indicator to tell you that, oh, try to see if you can log in as an anonymous user. But you as a tester, you should know the set of things that you have to try. And one of it is what? Trying to see if you can log into that server via anonymous FTP login. Does that make sense? Okay. So I guess there's no other question. Or is there any other question before I move on? Okay, so I think there's no other question. So I'll move on to the second method. Now, so for the second method, it is what we call the brute forcing. Brute forcing. So now let's now assume that anonymous FTP login was not enabled. It was not enabled on the server. What else can I do? So another thing that you can try out is what? Brute forcing. So you try to see if you can brute force it. So now to do that, I will do some couple of we call it house cleaning. So I'll just try to move to some yeah. So I'll try to do this. Okay. So now to do the brute forcing, one thing that you need is that you need to have some information about your target, because you need to have two separate files. So one of the file will contain possible usernames that you think can exist on your target, i.e., on that particular server that you're trying to hack. And the other thing is to have another file that will contain what we call possible passwords. Possible passwords. Oh, let me go and remove this TST. So in the file that you think is going to contain possible usernames that you think is going to exist on your target. So for that, you might want to do some forms of maybe information gathering, maybe some social engineering and all of that. Or you do your own, you do your own research, you do your own information gathering, you do all of that. And then for the possible passwords, you also need to have like a file that you think is going to contain some possible password that could be valid for your target. In reality, there is something we call rocku.txt, which is a file that has been gotten from a data breach in, I think, 2009. Yes, 2009. Yeah. And then this particular file contains possible password that they got from that data breach on a particular gaming platform. So when the data breach occurred, when it happens, they noticed that those people, the gaming platform, was storing password in clear text, i.e., it was not encrypted, it was not hashed, everything was in clear text. So when when they got hacked that time in 2006 or 2009, yeah, so when they got hacked that time, the attacker or the hacker basically copied the entire thing, copied the entire database, and then he created something known as a rocku.txt file or a rocku.txt file. Yeah, file, yes. And this file basically contains all the passwords that were gotten then in that particular, breach, that particular cyber breach. So recently, we have something we call rocku 2021 and then rocku 2024. All of these are also like gotten from what? Data breach. So this one is about, I think, a billion password, While this other one is about 10 billion password. How do you spell billion like this? 10 billions. Yeah, 10 billion. Yeah, 10 billion password. While this one is about 14 million possible password. So that's for your rocku.txt. So in reality and in real life, you might want to be using some word lists like rocku.txt or maybe rocku 2021 or maybe rocku 2024 as your own possible password list. And for your username list, you can just do your own normal information gathering to get some possible usernames. But in my own case, I already created a file for the possible usernames and another file for the possible password, which is what I have here as passwords.txt and then usernames.txt. So this username.txt consists of possible usernames against my target. And then this password.txt consists of possible passwords that could be valid for my targets. So the next thing is what? I want to brute force it. Remember, from our normal stuff that we've done, we already know that what? FTP is open. So the next thing is what? Let's try to see if we can brute force it. So now to brute force it, we'll be using something that we, something we call Hydra. So I'll be running Hydra. So now I need to specify some things. Actually, just 3 things in this case. One is I need to specify the username word list. And to specify the username word list, I'll be using minus capital letter L, as you can see here. So I'll use that to specify the username word list, as you can see there. Then I'll also try to specify the password word list. And to specify the password word list, I'll be using hyphen capital letter P to specify that. Does that make sense? Okay. So let me see if there's anybody raising up his hand. Nobody. So I think you understand what I've said so far. Okay. So then I'll use that to specify the password, password list. Then after that, the next thing is what? I need to specify the exact thing that I want to attack. And remember that what I want to attack is what? I want to attack this FTP port because it is opened on port 21 on this particular server, 10.10.1.11. So to do that, I'll just come here and I'll type FTP to specify the protocol that I want to attack. And then I will specify the IP address of the server itself. So now this makes the command that I'll be typing to brute force possible usernames, possible password against my target server, which is what 10.10.1.11 on the FTP port. So if I should do this, I'll just press what? I'll press enter, and then the brute forcing process will kick start. The brute forcing process will kick start. So it might take a while, but as you can see here, it's going to try out 41,174 different login trials. So we just leave it and then we let that continue. It might take about 2 to 3 minutes. I'm not really sure, but it might take time. Okay, yeah. And then as you can see here, we have been able to get a valid username, which is what? Martin, and a valid password, which is what? Apple. So nowadays, whenever they tell you, they'll be like, ensure that you're using a complex, ensure that your password is complex, ensure that you're not using something basic as maybe dog cat, maybe admin 123, maybe password 123, maybe QWERTY. All of that are weak passwords, and you see that from here. So maybe the password to your Wi-Fi is QWERTY, or the password to your system is Apple, or password 123. All of that are what? They are weak password. So now we have gotten a valid user account, which is what? Martin, and what? Apple. So what I'm going to try and do is I cannot split my terminal, so I'll try to open another terminal here. Yeah, I'll try to open another terminal here. You get to understand what's going on here. So now, based on the fact that we have been able to get a valid account, now let's try to see if we can access this FTP port via this particular username and via this particular password. So we try that, and we are going to do that. So as usual, I'll try to connect to the FTP port by typing FTP and then the IP, which is what? 10.10.1.11. As you can see there, right? Then I'll do what? I'll press enter. Now, in this case, it is asking me for a name. And the name that we can see here is basically the login that you have here. The login that you have here, which is what? Martin. So it implies that the name will be what? Martin. Then you can press enter. Then it comes here and then to be asking you for what? For the password. And just as you can see here, the password is what? Apple. So just go there and you do what? You type the password inside here. But one thing that is worth mentioning, one thing that I need to mention now is that by the time you start typing the password here, it will not be showing you that you're typing it. If you should type the password, it will not show here, unlike the username that you type here that it was showing that you're typing it. The moment you start by typing the password, it will not be showing that you're typing the password. So I'll go ahead and then I'll type in the password. And then we do what? We press enter. And what do you notice? User logged in. So now you have been able to use this credential that you've gotten from brute forcing to basically access or gain an access to this FTP server. Indirectly, you are on the web server itself. So now a lot of things can be done. A lot of interesting things and a lot of damaging things can be done. But as usual, I will stick to, I'm not going deep. I will stick to some basic things that can be done, such as you downloading content from this particular server. And you seeing, you can see a lot of things. So you can download content from the web server, you can upload content to the web server, you can, you can edit files, you can do a lot of things. But in this case, I will only focus on one thing. I will only be focusing on one thing. So as usual, if I should type the ls command, ls, just like your normal, your normal Linux system, is like to list out the content in a particular folder, right? Just like list out content in a particular folder. So if I should type ls and I press enter, and then you can see a lot of folders and files on the server. So maybe one thing that is worth me mentioning here is that if you see like this one now, you can see this Femi as a name, right? And you can see that the first character that you have here is what? Is letter D. First character that you have here is letter D. Same thing as this one. Same thing as this one. Same thing as this one. Why this one is what? Minus. So this letter D that you can see here is to tell you that these are folders. It is a directory. It is a folder. So Femi is a folder. Act is a folder. Jason is a folder. Martin underscore folder is also a what? A folder. But when you come here, you can see secret.txt. Secret.txt. And instead of you seeing a letter D, you can see a minus like number or sign as minus. That is to tell you that it is a file. It is a file. So secret.txt is a file. And then welcome, as you can see, also starts with what? Letter D. So that is to tell you that what? It is a folder. It is a directory. Does that make sense? Okay. So now, the next thing we can try to do here, right, is we can then try to download content from this server, such as what? You can try to download this particular content. We can try to download this particular file rather, which is what? Secret.txt. So we'll be downloading it by running the command get. We run the command get, and then we specify the file name, which is what? Secret.txt. And then we do what? We press enter. So this will try. Oh, don't tell me that this thing has gone off again. Why are you going off? Like, why on earth are you going off? Okay, so I think we should go for our 10-minute break. So before we are back, this will have been back. So let's go for our 10-minute break. It won't be 15 minutes, sorry. It will be 10 minutes break, and then we'll continue from where we stopped when we are back. So, for you guys, okay, you have questions? You have questions, right?
Yes, I have a question. Yes.
Okay. Let me start with you, Bright. Okay.
Okay. Quick one, please. So for you to be able to do this and enforcing, right? Is there like
Sorry, Bright, your voice is low. I can't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. So for this brute force, right?
Okay.
Is there like any form of vulnerability you spotted before you can be able to use brute force on this particular web server, right? And my reason for asking this question is because I'm seeing that everybody is susceptible to this brute forcing, right? We could just apply. So is there like any form of how do I put it now? A preventive means that can be put in place so that brute force will not be able to work on it for a given application.
Exactly, it's possible. Yeah, it is possible. It is possible. So, sorry, Ahmad. Let me first answer Bright, then I'll come to you, Ahmad. Okay. So now, Bright, for your question that says, is there anything that I saw before I'm able to know that, oh, will brute forcing be able to work against this server? The answer to that is what? Is no. Because as hackers, as attackers, you must be able to try every single thing that you know against the target. The bad guys that want to hack an organization will surely try every single thing that he knows to see if he can do what, if he can compromise that particular organization. So you, as a tester or as an ethical hacker or whatever it is, you must be able to try all of this. But yes, this was actually possible because there is no form of account lockout mechanism. So let's assume that I won't say everyone is susceptible to brute force attack. Why? Major reason why I would not say that is because there are countermeasures. And one of it is to do what? Is to implement account lockout policy. A good example of that is maybe someone is trying to log in, someone that claims to be Martin is trying to log into an application. So at first, person sends the username of Martin, a password of maybe admin. Then again, the person sends the username of Martin and a password of maybe dog cat. And again, the person sends the username of Martin and maybe a password of maybe pass 1, 2, 3, 4. Account lockout mechanism says that after some specific number of failed attempts, most likely between 3, I've seen 3, I've seen 5, I've seen 10. All of that depends on the policy of the organization or whatever it is that they have in place, right? So account lockout policy says that after some number of incorrect number of attempts, lock out that particular account. So for maybe for a web application now, they might just lock the account and then send you an email that, oh, someone is trying to like access your maybe your site or something. Kindly click on this link to reset your password or all of that. And for servers, basically what they might do is that they might just lock down that particular account for maybe 10 minutes. Then after 10 minutes, they open it. Does that make sense? So there are countermeasures, and it is not like everybody is vulnerable to like brute forcing or stuff like that. Account lockout mechanism or account lockout feature is a way to actually eliminate or let's say reduce the effect of what brute forcing attack. So depending on how you set up the account lockout mechanism. Does that make sense? Bright. Does it make sense? Bright.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now back to Ahmad. Sorry. Have I unmuted you before? Let me see if I can unmute you. Yeah, allow mic. Now you can speak, Ahmad. Ahmad Sultan. Sultan. Okay. I don't know. I can't hear you if you are speaking, Ahmad. Okay. Let's move to Anita Benjamin. I guess that's a male. Okay. So yeah, speak, Anita Benjamin. Can you speak? You guys are raising up your hands. Yeah, I've enabled your mic. You can speak. Benjamin, can you hear me? If you can hear me. I'm having a lot of people raising up their hands. Anita Benjamin, I don't know. I can't hear you. All right. Anita Benjamin, I cannot hear you. In case you are speaking, I can't hear you. You are speaking, but I could not hear you. I am unable to unmute. I've unmuted you, Ahmad. Are you here? Okay, let me see. Let me cut it again. Ahmad, yeah, I've enabled your mic. You should be able to speak. Ahmad. Anita, honestly, I cannot hear you. And I think that's the same for others too. Should in case he or she is speaking, I can't hear Anita Benjamin. But I think this is fine. This is all right. Let's go for our 10-minute break. We'll continue from where we stopped by the time we are back. So I'm back, and then I'll be starting with answering all the questions that you have for me here. Yeah, so I'll be starting with Anita Benjamin's question. She said, our question is about the password and the username files that I'm using with the Hydra command. Are those files manually created by the hacker or tester? All right. So in reality, the files for both the username and password, it could be generated or manually created by the hacker himself. And then also the hacker could choose not to create all those files by himself or herself. The hacker or the attacker could choose to use some default password list, like I said before, rawq.txt. Okay, let me share my screen back. Okay, I'm still sharing my screen. Okay. Yeah, I'm still sharing my screen. Okay. For example, now let's assume that instead of you using that, okay, you're about to conduct a brute forcing attack, and then you're like, oh, where do I find a username like file that I can use against the target? And where can I find a password file that I can use against the target? So for the password file, like I said earlier, you can use rawq.txt. It is available publicly. In fact, it comes pre-installed on Kali Linux. I already have the rawq.txt installed here, so I can even find it by typing locate rawq. Okay, exactly, yeah. And then this is it here. Even though it has been, what's it called now? It has been compressed. I just have to extract it, and then I'll be having the rawq.txt, file in this particular case. So this particular one, obviously, is not being created by the hacker or the attacker. It is available publicly. On Kali Linux, it is pre-installed. If you cannot, if you are using like Parrot and then maybe it's not there or something, it is even something that you can find publicly on GitHub and all of that. So that's for the password. For the usernames, the hacker or the attacker has options. The hacker or the attacker could choose to create a possible username file by himself. And if the hacker or the attacker does not want to create one by himself, I know Kali Linux has some default username, locate username. So I don't, okay, yes, but I don't think Parrot has, but then Kali Linux has one from checklist that basically contains some default usernames and all of that. But if you do not want to use that because you want to be very, very specific to your target, then that is where your skill or your, your information gathering technique might come into play, whereby you try to make research about that thing that you're trying to hack. When you're making research, you're looking for possible names, possible people working for the, for the target, maybe for the target that you're trying to like hack. You're looking at them, possible people working for them, and then from all of that, you can create a list that will contain possible usernames, and then you can just create your own and call it what username.txt. So yes, it could be created by the attacker, right? And then it could also be gotten publicly from GitHub if you don't want to like create one for yourself. So it is not like a must for the attacker to like create that. So, and then, okay, if the hacker or tester opt to use ROQ file, will it be listed twice? No. So if you want to use the ROQ.txt, all you have to do is from here, you just have to specify that particular ROQ.txt file here. You specify the entire location of that particular file. So if the ROQ.txt file, if it is inside the same folder as this my folder that I have here, if it is inside this word list folder, then I can just type ROQ.txt. And then yes, that will work. But in this case, this will not work. Why? Because this ROQ.txt file is not in this same folder as where I have my username.txt file. So I just have to like copy the entire file path and then specify it here. But the implication of what I'm trying to tell you is that if you have the ROQ.txt file, you don't specify it twice, you just use it like this. So you remove the first one and then you put ROQ.txt there. So I really do not know if that has answered your question, Anita Benjamin. Drop a reaction if that has answered your question. Just drop a reaction. Where is she again? Anita Benjamin. So if that has answered your question, can you like drop a reaction, Anita? Oh, Anita, can you hear me? Yes. No, this is another person. Okay, sorry. Anita, has that answered your question? Did that answer your question? I need a reaction from you to be sure that I've answered your question. Anita, hello. Okay, I'm not getting a reaction from you, so maybe. Oh, I'm coming out. I'm coming. Let me first answer all the questions that I have here. I'm coming, please. Okay, yeah, you're welcome. I've seen EHE. It's not started again. Sorry about that. EHE. Okay. Okay. Then let me look at who is this? The second question that I have here. I've answered Anita. Okay, yeah. Amina. Okay, how does one get the word list file? Is it installed in VMware? It's not about the VMware. It's about the operating system that you're using. If it is Parrot, if it is Kali Linux, if it is Ubuntu, if it is whatever it is that you're using. So now, ROQ.txt, if you are using Kali Linux, ROQ.txt comes pre-installed on it. So yes, you can just get it from ROQ.txt. It comes installed on it from checklist, actually from checklist. So you can see it from there. So for the password file, you can find that on installed on Kali Linux. You can find the password file, and then you might be able to also find some default username files installed on Kali Linux. I know it comes pre-installed on it because I've used that before. That is why I'm telling you that. It comes pre-installed on it. But then if you check and then you're not able to see it, it is very, very easy for you to get. You can just check on GitHub and then just clone it or pull it or whatever it is that you want to call it. And basically, you're going to have the list. So that should answer your question. So it is not about the VM, it's about the operating system itself, e.g., is it Parrot, is it Kali Linux, or whatever it is that is the operating system that you're using. So for Kali Linux, it is pre-installed on it. You're feeling sleepy. Sorry, Ashida, sorry. Okay, Ahmad Sultan. Okay, yeah, before I move on, Amina, have I been able to answer your own question? Amina, have I been able to answer your question? Yes, all right, thank you so much, Amina. Okay, now let me move to the last question that I have here before I come to Nat Itauma. Sorry, I'm not sure if I get the pronunciation well. Okay, so the last question I have here is that my question is for him to explain the brute force attack again, and also that even after an attacker has gained access to a user account, shouldn't there be limited amount of operation that the attacker can perform with the user account? That is valid, and I will show you here, and I will show you that. Okay, now, but then actually, in reality, it all depends on how it is being set up. It all depends on how it is being set up. For example, now what you have here, where is it again? After logging into the what's it called? After logging into the FTP server, as you can see, we log into the server via the FTP port. We enter the username that we found, we enter the password, and then we try to read out. Okay, and then you can see where we are. In this case, what you notice is that everything that I can do here is only limited to what? File transfer protocol related operation. So for example, now I cannot try to move into the admin folder. It will not work. I will not even be able to move out. I cannot move out of this FTP folder. That is why if I should type, if I should type pwd, which means that my present working directory, it will show this. So if I should attempt to move out of that particular, out of that particular folder, it will show you command successful. But then if I should type pwd, it will still be what? The same place that I was before. I cannot move out of this particular folder. So I am being limited in terms of what I can do. Why? Because I have only been able to compromise this server via the FTP. So in this case now, anything and any kind of operation that is related to what? File transfer related operation, or any files or any whatever it is that they have in their file transfer, file transfer protocol point, then it implies that whatever it is that they have there, I can basically interact with the entire FTP folder. But anything outside the FTP folder, it cannot be done. Why? Because I have only been able to compromise the FTP here in this case. So who has that question? Sultan, yes. So does that answer your question? Sultan? I don't know, my stuff is really, really messing up. So, so Sultan, can you just drop a message instead of dropping a reaction? Drop a message if that has answered your question. This thing is really, really messing up, but it's fine. Sultan, have I been able to answer your question? I'm not getting a reaction. I'm not getting a message from you. Oh, wait, am I still? Yeah. Sultan, have I been able to answer your question? Yes, sir, but I still don't understand the brute force. Okay, yeah. Okay. So I'll go back and use this thing that I was using. So look at what you have here. When I say brute force, basically it means that I am trying out different combinations of username and password to gain an access into something. Right? So now I might have a username known as Martin, and then I'm trying different password with this particular username. So I'm trying out admin, I'm trying out dotcat, I'm trying out pass 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm just trying out different combinations of credentials to see if I can gain access to a particular service or to a particular account. So that is basically brute forcing. I'm trying out different combinations of credentials to see if I can gain access into something. But like I said before, brute forcing, obviously, it could be prevented, which is why I won't say every application is vulnerable to brute forcing. Why? Because you can just implement an account lockout, feature, such that maybe after 3 incorrect login attempts, you do what? You lock the account, Martin, for maybe some specific amount of time, or until maybe the admin resets the password for Martin. So I don't know. Has that answered your question now, Sultan? Before I move to Nat, I still have one more. I have one more other thing to show you. Sultan, has that answered your question? For you not understanding the concept of brute forcing? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Yeah, welcome. You're very, very much welcome. Okay, now Nat Itauma or something. You were raising up your hand before, so I would like to confirm if you have questions or something, so I can unmute you. So let me see. I think I have to come here. I think I've unmuted you before. Nat, where are you? Okay. I think I've unmuted. Okay, I've not unmuted you. All right. Now you can speak, Nat. Try unmuting yourself now and speak.
Thank you, Mr. Oluwatobi.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
My question goes here. Now you talked about brute forcing. Now
Okay.
so how does brute forcing work on a security conscious system, like a system that is protected? How do you brute force? Because I've probably seen in some movies where a very secure system is being what's the word now? In is it assessed or something? I've forgotten the word I'm trying to use now. But
Okay.
what I'm trying to ask basically is how does brute force work on a protected system? Like a
Okay.
system that is very protected. So how does brute force work? Brute forcing work?
Okay. Okay. So now we're talking about the protected system. First thing is that they are going to have an account lockout mechanism in place. It does not mean that you cannot attempt to brute force. You can surely attempt to brute force, but the implication of that is that your attempt will fail. Why? Because depending on their own policy, it might be like, oh, maybe after after someone tries entering different combinations of username and password on this particular account, maybe what I have in place is what lock the account for the user Martin, and or maybe until the admin resets the password. The implication of this is what is that okay, a normal hacker will come, will try to see, oh, it will see FTP port is open, right? Okay, let me try to brute force it. So the hacker will, the hacker will go there, will try to like brute force it and all of that. But what happens is that based on the fact that this thing has been configured, that after 3 incorrect trials, lock this account. Every other request that will be coming after this, every other request that will be coming after this, they will not be processed at all. Right? They will not be processed at all, which implies that instead of you being able to like get all these things that we got here, you not even get any result at all. Does that make sense? And that is because they have actually locked this account. So even after the 3 incorrect trials, you still continue doing your brute forcing attack and everything. Everything that you are doing outside that is invalid. Why? Because the server is not even processing it at all. It's dropping everything. Why? Because the account has been locked until the account becomes open. And then in this case now, the account will only become open until the admin go ahead and reset the password for the user what? Martin. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that's for Nat. So does that make sense, Nat?
Yes, it does. So I want to add a variation to the question. So in the
Okay.
process of brute forcing, yeah, let's just assume now the system is protected and okay, you're trying to brute force and you're not getting any details at all. So in this process of brute forcing, is it now necessary? So not necessary, but is it now possible to probably use a DDoS attack to probably maybe overwhelm the server? I'm just thinking because I've seen situations where this happens. So that's the things they do to probably get whatever they want. So I'm just trying to understand that part as well.
Yeah, I'll answer your question. Okay, yeah. So one thing that you need to know is that the concept of brute forcing is different from what DDoS. So DDoS is what you call what? Distributed denial of service attacks. And something about a denial of service attack is that what? You are not even trying to like gain access to any system at all. You are just trying to prevent legitimate people from accessing a resource from a particular maybe server. So if you should try performing a denial of service attack, even you will not be able to access the source from it, and nobody will be able to access the source from it because you are overwhelming that server such that it is not able to answer anybody at all. So when you are performing denial of service attack, you are not trying to gain an access to a system. You are just trying to like I used to tell people, you are just trying to like maybe cause a nuisance, or you are trying to like prevent people from accessing resources. from a system. And that is different from you performing a brute forcing attack. When you're performing a brute forcing attack, what you're doing is what? You're looking for a way to gain an access to the system. So does that make sense? The objectives are different. So NAT doesn't make sense. NAT.
Yeah, it does. It does. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I still have one more. I have one more demo to show you before we move on. All right. So now there was a guy that asked about SSH. That was like, when I say SSH into a system, that what do I mean? So the demonstration that I will be showing you now is going to answer that question better. The demonstration I will be showing you now will answer that question better. Okay, now from our results, from what we did before, you can see that SSH port is open, port 22, yes or no? You can all see that, right? FTP port is open. We tried to, we tried the anonymous FTP login, we tried the brute forcing, and then, all of that. And then as you can see, like I said, you can try to, okay, let me finish this before I actually move on. Before I move to SSH, let me just finish this. So from here, we can decide to, ls, this one has gone off again. What the heck? Well, I like it. Okay, I think I'll just move on. Okay. Well, now for SSH, you can see that what SSH port is open, right? So now the next thing is what? On this server, SSH port is open. Let's see if we can actually gain an access to the system via SSH. Does that make sense? The same thing that we've done for FTP. We're going to do a similar thing for SSH, except from the fact that SSH does not have anything that they call anonymous login. Does that make sense? But then you can also try what? You can also try out brute forcing. You can also try out what? Brute forcing. And like I said, it is the attack will be successful because there is no form of account lockout mechanism implemented. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm still waiting for this to answer me. Okay, yeah, I think it's back. Okay, send this. All right, now we can see that the SSH port is open. So let's try to see if we can gain an access to the system. If we can try to exploit the SSH. So we're going to do something similar. Should I do that now? Or let's first try to, okay, let's try to finish up with this exit. Okay, let me try to clear this. So as usual, you log in with the credential we saw before. We saw Martin, and then we saw a password of what? We saw a password of app. Let's exit and try again. So we try to log in, we try Martin, and then we try app, and then we are logging, and then we can type ls, and then we can see a lot of all the things that you have in the server, right? So I can decide to download this particular file here, which is what? secret.txt. And then to download it, I'll be running the get command. So I'll say get secret.txt. So this has actually downloaded the file for me. You can see transfer complete. So I can decide to exit this. I can press ls, and then I will see the file here. Can you see that? Secret.txt. And then I can read out the content of that particular file. And then you can see the content of the file. This is a confidential file. Do not disclose to the public and all of that. And as usual, similarly, you can also decide to do what? Upload files to that particular FTP server. But I'll not be showing you that. But those are like things that you can do. All right. Because of our time. So now we know that SSH port is open, right? From our scan and everything, you can see that SSH is open. So let's try to also brute force this SSH port. So we do that. And to do that, I'll also be using Hydra. I'll be using the command that, like, the command I'll be using now is also similar to what I used before. I'll also be using Hydra, right? So I'll say Hydra -L, I'll specify the username, right? I'll say capital letter P, I'll specify the password, and then I will say SSH, then I'll specify the IP address of the server, which is 10.10.1.11. So something about SSH, I think that, yeah, that will take time, but yeah, we just do it and then wait for the results. So now this is already starting the attack against the targets, if that makes sense. Okay, so now we can just wait for the result of that. And then one thing that you notice is that the moment you're able to like gain, or you're able to like get the credential for this particular SSH field or this SSH port, it means that you can then SSH in into the server. And like I said, when I say SSH in into the server, I will show that practically so you understand better. But basically, it means that I can then decide to try to connect to that server or access the web server via that particular SSH port that is opened. So depending on the credentials that I'm able to see, depending on whatever it is that I am able to see, then I can decide to do what? To access that server via the SSH. And remember, what I'm doing now is just what? Brute forcing. What I'm doing now is what? Is brute forcing. So you might want to wait for it. It might take a while. I'll only wait for one of these to complete because SSH is a bit slower than FTP. I won't say slow, but then like the way it's going to process this thing to be a bit slower. Yeah. But then just wait for it, right? Okay. But then what you notice is that the moment we are able to get the credentials, then we can use the credentials to log into this particular server. And then you see, what's it called now? You see the difference between you trying to like gain an access to a server via FTP, and then you trying to like gain an access to a server via SSH. For FTP, everything that you can do is being limited to the FTP folder. So everything that you have in the FTP folder, yeah, you can do all of that. But for SSH is a bit different because most likely you'll be logging in as a user because you have been able to compromise, you have been able to like brute force their credentials, if that makes sense. I know this will take time, I know, but then okay, let's just wait. Hopefully there's no question. I can't see anybody raising up his own hand, so I guess we are good. Okay, so we just wait for that. We just wait for that. Okay. And as usual, I need to ensure that this one is not going off. So we won't have to be doing this one after the other. Okay. So at this point, it has done 185 tries. It has about 40,989 to do. But as usual, I just like pressing, I like to press enter, so I'll just press enter. Okay. Just have to wait for it. Okay, that's fine and that's good. Okay. So while that is running, because you have no choice than to just wait for it. While that is running, okay, I'll soon be done. Obviously, I'll soon be done. Okay. So while that is running, then we can try and see if while that is running. And as usual, like I do tell people, if you're performing brute forcing and then you're using a list like maybe Rocky, one thing that you need to know is that you are brute forcing and then you're doing another thing entirely. So you might be doing the brute forcing and attempt or whatever it is, obviously with permission. I don't have to, I don't have to say that. No, I have to say it actually. Yeah. But then I assume and then I'm expecting you to know that all of this, if you have to like do that, it has to be done with permission and all of that. But then, if you're able to like see that SSH is running and then you're trying to like perform, you're trying to like perform a brute forcing attack, and then you're trying to perform a brute forcing attack, and then you're using a very big, maybe word list containing a lot of usernames, containing a lot of possible passwords and the likes. One thing that you need to know is that what is going to take a whole lot of time. So you as a person, what you will be doing or what you should be doing is that, okay, maybe you're brute forcing and then you're doing another thing entirely. So maybe you're doing some other aspect of your ethical hacking or you're doing some other aspect of your stuff and the likes. Yeah, so you're brute forcing, but you brute forcing should not stop whatever it is that you want to do. Why? Because this might take a whole lot of time. But I know that we do not have the time. And I'm hoping that I will not have to cancel this. So I'll just give it 5 minutes. So while that is running, if you have any question, you can just let me know. Okay, so while that is running, if you have any question, you can just let me know. I don't think anybody's raising up his hand. So I'm guessing, I guess that we are good. Okay. So this has done 561. It has about 40,613 to do. That's a whole lot to do. Oh no. Okay, that's fine. But this is a whole lot. Okay, but you just have to wait. You have to wait, and you have to wait. Okay. Wait, what is this? Oh, come. Let me cancel this one. How come I have to? Okay. But one thing that you're going to notice here is that if this is successful, right, it will return the credentials to you, i.e., username and password. Remember, in this case, you're attacking the SSH port and not FTP. So once that is successful, and then you can see the credentials, then you can just come in and try to SSH, and then you provide a username at the IP address of your server, which is what? 10.10.1.11. This is taking a lot of time. Yeah, and then you press enter. Then it's going to ask you for a password. And as usual, the password would have been discovered from this particular attempt that you're doing. And then once you see the password, you can just come here and then provide the password, right? And that will be, yeah, that will be it. Okay. But this is taking time, taking time, taking time. I guess I might just have to stop that. Okay, let's give it 2 more minutes, 2 more minutes, 2 more minutes. Okay, 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 okay. I think I have already. That's about 39,000. It's still a lot. Okay, okay, okay. I don't think we have the time for this. It's taking a lot of time. So the factor is time factor. I know SSH is a bit slower. So all right. Hope you're still with me, Sha. I hope you guys are not sleeping. If you are with me, drop an name a reaction. It's really offensive today. If you are with me, can you drop a reaction? So I'll be sure that you're with me. Okay, thank you so much, Nat. Gilbert, Rashida, Eric. If you are with me, just drop a reaction. Drop a reaction. So while we are with that, all right, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, hold on. I think I have to. Okay. Taking time. It should not be up to 10 minutes. Yeah, at least the first entry should not be up to 10 minutes. But the first one might take up to 5. Yeah, up to 5 minutes. Yes. Okay. Why that is still still running, still working, still doing all of that. Most likely, if you are working on a on a target and you're authorized, obviously you're authorized to work on that target, you have no choice than to just wait for it. 39,985. Okay, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. But not too fine because I have a lot. Okay, yeah, we've gotten 1. So now what do you notice here now? Notice that the password that we got for this user Martin at SSH for the SSH port is the same thing as what you have here for the FTP. Martin and what? An app. So now the implication of this is that there exists a user known as Martin on this particular server. So now, since we've gotten the login and the password for that user Martin, then we can try to SSH in as that particular user. So what do I mean by SSH in into that server as the user Martin? It means that I will try to log in as user Martin on that particular server, which is 10.10.1.11. Can you see that? Then I'll press enter. Now, the moment I press enter, it's going to ask me for what? A password. And the password is basically what you have here, which is what? Apple. And as usual, you type in the password Apple here. But one thing that you need to know, like I've said before, is that as you're typing the password, you will not see what you're typing. But if you are wrong, it will tell you that, it will let you know that, oh, the password is wrong. But as you're typing the password, it will not be shown here. And then you press enter, And what do you notice? You have actually logged in as Martin on that particular server. So in this case now, I am basically inside Martin desktop. I won't say desktop folder now, but then I am basically into his computer. I've been able to break in as Martin, so I can access Martin's computer stuff here. So if I should type dir, which is you might be familiar with this, might not be familiar with this. This looks like a command prompt terminal. So if you are familiar with Windows operating system, then you understand what I mean by a command prompt terminal. Basically, it allows you to use your command line interface to basically interact with a Windows operating system. You also have what? You also have PowerShell, right? But then let's just talk about command prompt from now. So dir command basically means that you want to list out all the content in a particular folder. So now there is a user known as Martin, right? So now if I should type dir, it means that inside that particular Martin system, what are the files and directories that he has there? So by the time I press enter, it will show me everything that Martin has on the system: contacts, desktop, documents, downloads, every single thing that Martin has there. So if I want to check his document folder, I can just type cd to documents like that, and I'll do what? I'll press enter. Now notice how this thing moves from users Martin to what? Users Martin and documents, which is to tell you that what? At this point, you are inside Martin's documents folder. And as usual, you can also check out the content of whatever it is that Martin has in his document folder by typing what? dir. And then when you type dir and you press enter, if there's anything there, it will tell you. But in this case, there's no file on Martin's document folder. Does that make sense? So now I have been able to log in as Martin. So I've gotten an access to the server as the user Martin that exists on this application. So now let me show you something. As usual, when you are doing this, there's a lot of someone has a question, which I told him that yes, there are like restrictions. There is like a limit to what you can do. Team, I'm coming. Let me just finish up with this particular. I'm almost done. So yeah. So now in this case, after we've been able to do all of this, if you should decide to move out of this folder, now you are in the users folder and you type dir, then you can see all the users on that particular server. There's an admin user, there's a user with the name Jason, and there's another user with the name Martin. Now, this Martin is the person we have been able to compromise, right? Now, if I should try to move into Jason folder, one thing that you notice is what? It will tell you that permission denied, access is denied. Why? Because at this point, you have only been able to compromise Martin on this particular server. So if you want to check the content of what JSON, you have an option. That's where the option of lateral movement comes into play. You have to find a way of compromising the user JSON before you can then become or move into the JSON folder and then go and check his files, his documents, his folders, and all of that. All right, so with that, I've come to the end of today's practical. Thank you so much for your time. And then before I wrap it up and I'm finished for today. Team, I really don't know, but I guess you have a question, so I will try to unmute you so you can speak. All right.
All right, Toby, thank you. I think that's enough for today. Then we can continue tomorrow. So
Yeah,
thank
right.
everyone for joining. Samuel can kindly take it off from there.
Whatever it gives to security, it was it gives back to you. Every day is for the thief, or one day is for the owner. That talks about that the thief is 99 times smarter than the owner. That's what it means. One, you must need to think like one.